We are here at Ferrari Land in Tarragona, Spain. And my goodness, what a magical place this place is overall. And it's going to be a spectacle in itself. We had 4 global qualifiers. This is actually going to be the 5th official asphalt event. And during those 4 global qualifiers, we had over 2 million players attempt to make it here. And now we're down to the final 8. Who's going to take it? It is anyone's guess, but it's going to be nothing short of spectacular as we get things started at the Ferrari HP Esports Asphalt Series Finals 2024. Hello everyone and welcome to the Asphalt Series 2024, and we've already said it before and we're going to say it again, these players have been marvellous throughout the qualifiers and now we're going to witness them firsthand here live in Tarragona, Spain to find out who's going to be crowned champion for this event. I am Lethal and I've got my right hand man here. I don't know what I'll do without you, my friend. We're back with Marth, and Marth, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing so excellent. This is going to be one of the best tournaments we've ever seen in asphalt history. This whole year all culminates with today's tournament, so I'm super excited to see all the action go down.
And it's incredible the amount of players who attempted to qualify here throughout the entirety of August and September. And now we're finally here ready to find out who's going to be crowned champion for this event. And my goodness, the qualifiers were particularly close throughout the majority of that event.
Absolutely. We had 4 qualifiers, and the times for all those qualifiers were so close. I was watching the leaderboards. Every single minute, there was going to be a new champion. Every single minute, players were putting on different scores. So it was so close to watch.
That's right, and I think it's about time we get the players onto the stage, shouldn't we, and to find out exactly a little bit about each of these players and who's going to be competing here today. So we're going to start things off with the first player, which is going to be none other than Nato.
Nato's part of Rev Clan, one of the most feared clans in the Clash tournaments, and a very consistent leaderboard contender.
And the next player, and no shame of competition, he's been around the block quite a few times, it is Jagermeister.
What an absolute beast Jagermeister is. Incredible participation in many tournaments, and a recent win last time around in the last tournament.
And the North American hope, it is none other than Elite Joe.
NA's last hope, and his resume is stacked with so many tournaments, and it's going to be very interesting to see how he plays today.
And speaking of a repertoire of victories this year, we have none other than Future Flash.
Future Flash is undoubtedly the king of asphalt esports. Hopefully he'll put on a show for us today.
And our next player, it is going to be Requiem.
Requiem is their first final appearance here today, but they're always so top position in event leaderboards, so surely put on a good show for us today.
And the next one, we haven't seen him in a while, but we'll be seeing him here today. It is Onio.
Onio had an amazing position in Asphalt Series 2023, so it's been a while, but I'm sure he's ready to go.
It's also been a while is this next player, and it's going to be the Big 71.
Big 71 from France, an absolute legend in the game, doing so many things and absolutely nitpicking every part of the game.
And the last player, and no means least, it is going to be none other than Myeon.
Myeon is one of the best in the Asian region, a consistent top contender, especially for this event.
And these are the 8 players standing before you who could be at least attempting to try and get the crown as the Ferrari HP Esports Asphalt Series 2024 champion. It's been a long road for a lot of these players. They've gone through numerous different competitions. As we said, this is the 5th official asphalt event here, and now we're going to see who's going to take it all for the final event of the year, and I'm sure it's going to be a spectacle in itself, and it'll be interesting to see how things will develop over the course of today. And it depends on the circumstances as well, because with some of these players, they've won countless competitions. Like Future Flash is a great example of that, with the amount of competitions he's won. He's lost, I think he's won everything bar one, and even then, that was a close affair.
Absolutely. I mean, most of these players here have tournament experience in the past, but we do have some first-name appearances, like we mentioned earlier, Nato and Requiem as well. But as we take a look at the bracket here, this is where things are going to shape up. This is going to decide who faces who, and as you can see, we have a absolutely stacked bracket.
We certainly do indeed. It's the bottom half, which I'm especially looking at the moment. We could see an Elite Joe versus Future Flash semi-final, potentially, depending on the circumstances. But on the other side, Jagermeister has to deal with a lot on his plate as well.
Yeah, Big 71, some amazing competition. I said nitpicking earlier, but what I meant was this guy has made codes. He's made so many, I guess, strides to understanding the game in every little tiny detail. I didn't even know it was possible with some of the things that he's pulling off in the game. So I'm curious to see if he has anything up his sleeve today.
And we do have a schedule throughout the entire course of today. If you're just joining us, thank you so much for watching. And I can say this, but this is going to be an absolute blast. So buckle yourselves in as we get ready when we see the schedule shortly. But my goodness, the bracket, it couldn't be any more stacked if it tried. There's some players there which I think a lot of people at home will recognise, especially in the competitive scene, but maybe a couple which is not really been showboating too much, but could definitely make an impact or potentially be a dark horse.
Absolutely. There are many dark horses throughout this tournament, but we, like you said earlier, we have Jagermeister, Future Flash, Onio, Big 71, names that you may have seen before, but Requiem and Nato, first appearances here, and from Japan as well, first country appearance in one of these tournaments as well. So look, there's so many ways that this tournament can go down. It's every man for himself.
Yeah, it's always Myeon who is actually representing the APAC region, but now we've got a couple more players from that region now to see exactly what they can really show here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the theme around this whole tournament is unite, right? So not only is the entire world being united from all different regions, all different countries, but we also have all different platforms. And this is something we didn't see for Asphalt Series 2023, but now it's changed.
But let's go into the first match and discuss that a little bit more. Now, what's your thoughts between these two players? Because going into it as well, especially with the bracket, it's going to be a very difficult task for a lot of these players to try and figure out exactly what's going to do. We want to see some key indicators here to find out exactly what could occur. And I always feel like the quarterfinals will give us those indicators to decide how they could develop over time going into this tournament.
Certainly. So I think Nato coming in as the sort of unknown player, this is going to be really curious to see, because with Myeon, he's a known talent. We know exactly his sort of play style, but also just consistently speaking in terms of Nato, making so many top leaderboard appearances. However, that means he doesn't really have this live LAN environment one-on-one experience. So that's something that some of these players do have, some of these players don't have. And when you see them get on stage, oftentimes we can see maybe they crumble under the pressure, maybe they don't exactly know how to deal with another car on the track, because usually they're just by themselves doing the time trials, and that's something that's really differentiating between the play styles with these players.
Yeah, the amount of strategies you've got to use, having a plan A to plan Z, pretty much in terms of what needs to do itself justice, so to speak, because this isn't a time trial anymore. You don't get 1,000 chances to try and make it. You know, there's only one lifeline, and just to let everyone know at home, but it is a single elimination bracket. Every match will be a best of 3, with the grand finals, which will be a best of 7 to finish things off. So it's not like a best of 5 or anything like that. You've got very little time to try and at least go forward. And if it's a best of 5, it will be a little bit different, but because it's best of 3, you have to be on your absolute A game. As we go back to Nato, and see he's 18, a very young player from Japan, and it's nice to see more players from that region coming here.
Yeah, this is the first time Japan has been represented in one of these tournaments, which is something we haven't seen very often, is that sort of Asian region now up and coming, which has been something in esports recently, which I'm really, really excited about, because there's so much hidden talent within that region. There are so many options for potential for these players, but also with Myeon coming from South Korea, does have previous tournament experience with the Asphalt Series 2023, but also an amazing tournament record, especially in that Asian region with some of the other recent tournaments online, though.
What I like is his favourite Ferrari is the Ferrari F50. That's actually one of my personal favourites as well. So he's got brownie points for me already, considering how things go. And it's crazy the amount of progress he's made, and he's only 18. It's madness.
All of these players put hundreds of hours into this game. It is absolutely phenomenal how much time and devotion these players give to the game. I was watching Big 71 practice earlier today, and I was saying things that I've never seen throughout this game's history.
And we do have the bracket, which we'll come back to shortly as well, just to give people a little bit of an idea of exactly how things are going to go and how things are going to come up. But between these two, it will be a good starter to see how things are going to go. There is some loggerheads here and there. These two players are definitely going to know each other quite well, especially in the APAC region with the amount of events they've had to compete in against each other.
Exactly, and the other thing to keep in mind is just how these two players, like I said earlier, Myeon does have that LAN experience. You do have that experience of having another person on the track with you. And speaking of tracks, we have this list for you guys today, and we have a great variety. We're going to see Rome, Osaka, and Auckland. And I'm curious to see if we do get to Auckland, that is a twisty track, but it's based off of tracks from real life. And especially the car that they'll be using today is very suited for that environment.
I was just about to say the starting grid in Auckland, I would love to see that because it can be so narrow and it can be quite intense in a lot of those situations, especially some of those twists and turns. So I think we can both safely agree that we both want a track 3 here.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. The more asphalt, the better. That's what I say. And of course, with some of these, we've gotten full best of 3s previously, and we've even gotten full best of 7 finals as well. Not to spoil anything with that, of course, but with that track variety, a lot of these players are going to have different preferences for maybe top speed oriented tracks, maybe those twistier tracks. With this car, though, it's extremely versatile. You do have a pretty decent top speed of 228 miles an hour. But again, with that handling, this car is so agile. You can take corners so sharply. I was watching these players play earlier today. And again, the amount of G-forces that they were pulling in the corners was insane. Yeah,
it's incredible to watch. And it's going to be a pleasure to watch overall as we see how far they can go, especially with the vehicle in mind. And it's honestly going to be quite a clear example of how things are going to go. With Myeon as well, will it be more pressure on him? Because normally he's the person from the Asia-Pacific region who's normally representing, but now he's got a rival here with him already.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that, again, you have to think about coming into this game is that experience with the LAN tournament versus just online experience. I mean, you can play multiplayer, there are collisions and there are knockdowns, but this has the added pressure of being on stage, being in person, being able to stare your rival directly in the eyes and say, I'm gunning for that first place position. That's something that some of these players don't have in terms of experience. So again, that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind as we get into the first race. Myeon coming out in second place. This is going to be curious to see. He is starting out at a bit of a lower position. Both these players using perfect nitro to get around the corner with top speed potential. Myeon missing shockwave ever so slightly, actually twice in a row, and that gives a big, massive advantage to the other player. Myeon coming in second place. This isn't a good look for him so far.
It's not indeed, but still using that shockwave to good use, switching to the double. But as we switch over to NATO now, and you can see already use that shockwave to go over this next jump, and still seems to be smooth sailing so far. He's playing it a little bit safer than usual due to the fact that he's got that half a second to a second lead, but good nitro management overall as he gets around this next corner.
Yeah, lovely use by your shockwave to try and get around that rough terrain. If you go over the rough terrain in some of these cars, you actually lose a bit of speed. As we barrel onto the second lap here, Nato with a pretty sizable lead, maintaining it into that second lap. How these players are going to go, and boom, we do see the forced barrel. What an amazing job by Myeon to get it and not get wrecked. That was an incredible move. And unfortunately for him, though, it does seem like he's still a bit behind there every once in a while. So it looks like Myeon's going to have to pull off something incredible to catch up. Whereas on the other side, he's going to probably pray for a mistake from Nato. That might be the only way Myeon gets back into this game.
Yeah, you can see already Nato's just doing a great job, just holding into that lead, not really being too pressured at all in the slightest. Myeon has had to take these risks with those straight barrel roll jumps, but doesn't seem to be doing him too many favors at the moment. As Nato just with a huge lead so far, and Myeon is just trying to catch up. He's actually managed to gain him just by a few tenths of a second, but it could be too little too late here, as then he's got the last portion of this track to go.
Yeah, we saw some of that added extra airtime from Myeon, but it doesn't look like it's going to be quite enough. As you mentioned earlier, he did gain a little bit of that lead. Is it going to go sharp enough for the corner? He is. Oh no, almost wrecked, but luckily recovered it just in time to finish in first place for our opening match here in the Ferrari Esports HP Asphalt Series 2024 finals.
My goodness, I was getting the EMEA region finals kind of backlog going into my mind because we saw so many players actually fail during the last portions of their tracks, but it looks like we're not going to be seeing that here today. Or we could do. We've still got a lot of time left. Obviously, we're just at the very beginning, and this is our first quarter-final. If you're just joining us, welcome. This is the Ferrari HP Esports Asphalt Series 2024 finals, and this is a single elimination bracket, and all these matches will be a best of 3 as we're watching between the likes of Nato and Myeon, the players from Japan and South Korea representing. And already Nato with a great way to start things off. And I always feel like, especially if you're quite new to any esport, it's that confidence burner where if you manage to win that first track, the pressure on you is just not as, well, not tenfold in comparison to what it was originally. So it's going to feel a little bit more comfortable now, and Myeon is going to have to be on that backtrack and try and create that reverse sweep, which could happen. We know that he's got the potential and the skill, especially the pedigree skill behind him.
Absolutely, and that was something I was a little worried about for Nato, is how are you going to approach that sort of first match? I mean, first match up, first player, and taking that first place victory was very surprising because we saw no nerves, no mistakes, nothing like that to make me feel like there's going to be any worry for Nato. But on the other side, we have Myeon, who, again, I would say is a little bit of a favorite in this match just because you do have that LAN experience. So congrats to Nato for winning that first match. So can Myeon make it so we get a 1-1 in this matchup so far?
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting way to kick things off if Nato actually does defeat Myeon 2-0. It's I'm not sure I would say an upset. Maybe due to Myeon's reputation, it's a little bit more understandable. But Nato, I wouldn't even say coming out of nowhere either. He's been known for having those top qualifying times. First time he's actually been able to make it here, and he's looking to be one of those players to not only be a dark horse, but really put a dent into the armor to all these top players.
Absolutely, and another thing to consider is if you look on screen, you can see the controllers of which these players are using. And something that we've had for a vast majority of Asphalt's life was these players were segmented based on not only control type, but also platform, whereas this is no longer the case. We have players from all different regions and all different platforms competing against one another. You wouldn't see this matchup a couple months ago, but now with Asphalt Legends Unite, we have it. Controller, phone, computer, no matter what you're playing, you can compete in Asphalt Legends Unite, and that is the most amazing thing, is that is where these players are truly separated, not by the control type or what device they happen to use, but by pure skill.
Exactly, but it's not platform-based anymore, which is going to be, well, we could say that going into it now, it's great to actually finally witness, because we were waiting for a long time for cross-platform, and when we finally got it, we were absolutely hyped. Honestly, me personally, I was so happy. I was like, yes, finally we can actually not only be able to play against all the other players from different platforms, but the tournament scene is just going to be incredible, just due to the fact that it's going to now push each other even more to hit that top spot or be the top dog in a lot of these tournaments.
Absolutely. I mean, you saw before Asphalt Legends Unite, there were some kings of the platforms like Jagermeister for Android, you have Future Flash for iOS, and it was sort of a conversation of like, what would be the case if
we had so many of these conversations, didn't we?
Exactly. So many hypotheticals of like, who would actually win? But now with Asphalt Legends Unite, we've seen that, and we've seen it go back and forth. I mean, Future Flash was still taking home all of the championships. I mean, it was a little crazy, but then Jagermeister fought back recently, which was a very surprising result, but one we needed maybe for the community here in Asphalt Legends Unite. But again, that's sort of the beautiful thing, is we have players from every single platform. I mean, we have today PlayStation 5, mobile, PC. I mean, it's off the charts with how many players can now participate in these tournaments.
Yeah, it's actually incredible to witness, and it's a great thing to see as well, just overall, because we was always wondering, like, when will it happen? And then now it has happened, and this is actually the first Asphalt series we're going to get, where it's the first time we actually witness all these players going up against each other without having the iOS, the Android, the Windows platform. Now we can actually finally witness it all firsthand, and it's going to be incredible to witness already. Well, we already are witnessing it, so, you know, we can't complain.
Absolutely. I mean, we've already seen the first result. Like, maybe controller players do have that special advantage. Maybe the tilt players have special advantages. I mean, we've seen different conversations on how do these control schemes actually merge into one another when these players face each other in real life. So, I mean, that's definitely a conversation. I mean, for example, we can look at the Big 71 placing third place last year in the Asphalt series of 2023. How does that result actually compare to being in cross-platform? How does that skill level compare to different platforms here today? But of course, we also have a very different roster of players coming out today to qualifying for this time around.
What I also find quite interesting was some of the players actually switching from their original platform now. We've had some actually switch from Android to PC, and it kind of makes a little bit of sense. They just decide not that it's something a little bit different, but it's more to their taste, really. So now that, of course, with that cross-platform play, it's actually made it available to them, they was like, actually, no, I will make the switch now because it won't make too much difference to, you know, how I'm going to progress.
Absolutely. I mean, when Asphalt Legends Unite first came out, I loaded up on my gaming PC. I had a giant 4K monitor. It looked absolutely beautiful. But then I was like, I still love tilting with my phone. It just feels right. There's something about it that makes me feel like I'm actually driving the car. And that's something that's so fun to play, especially with tilt controls. And now PC players can also experience what is it like to actually use tilt. Now, if you're on tilt, you can say, what is it like to use controller, vice versa, keyboard, mouse, anything you want to use, you can play with Asphalt Legends Unite, and that is so cool. So again, that's another conversation, is like, are we going to see possibly maybe the tilt players have a special advantage in the corners because they have more precise input, whereas we've had conversations about activating shockwave in certain platforms, like for example with using the spacebar. Sometimes players say, oh, it could be a little bit quicker here to get nitro here and take your corner here if you're using tilt. So again, that's something very interesting to see how it's going to shake up on the track itself.
Yeah, I can't really see Future Flash tilting his pad, but but you never know. You could add another control scheme for that. And we must say thanks to Ferrari as well for the help us run this and put up this event as well, because we've had a fantastic week so far. And even with Ferrari Land and everything else, all the players here have had that VIP experience which money cannot buy.
Absolutely. I mean, we managed to get a tour of the park itself earlier today.
We did.
And oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. The rides are so excellent. They actually play the engine sound with the roller coaster, and it sounds excellent. But here we go into the second match, Myeon versus Nato. And Nato still managing to get that first place position right out of the gate. So again, the question is, can Myeon this time around actually manage to catch up? And last time we saw a little bit of, I guess, you wouldn't say mistakes, but we saw forced barrel rolls coming out that maybe he had to recover. And looks like we got two different paths. Myeon opting to go for that lower route into this section here with the poles, and actually with Nato going that other route, you often don't see it. However, because this car has such good handling, it actually may change, and it looks like they're coming out of the shockwave here into the straightaway, and Nato maintains the lead. Actually the right decision with this route, and sometimes you don't see that. You'll see different players taking the exact same route because they played this track over and over and over again, but Nato with a very different strategy as he used perfect nitro to get over that rough terrain, chaining these ramps together, going onto the second lap shortly.
Yeah, it's nice to see if he hasn't done any self-infliction in terms of actually taking a bad route. He's actually selected it on his own accord. It wasn't pushed out the way of the tunnel or anything like that. He decided to go that route himself, and it seems to progress nicely here as Nato is still looking to maintain that lead. Doesn't seem to be pressured at all in the slightest, and he hasn't really got too much left to go here as he's in this second lap, and he's looking to progress very well so far, using that perfect nitro to get around this next bend and going to shockwave straight down. But is he actually going to take the different route again? Yes, he does. It avoids the tunnel completely, with Myeon going the usual route.
Yeah, and he actually chose a little bit of different strategy. Myeon opting not to go for that other section there, but actually trying to get extra airtime by bouncing off the wall. So if you didn't know, in Asphalt Legends Unite, you actually get 30% higher speed if you go in the air. So every opportunity these players are going to get, they're going to launch their cars into the air. And as you can see, though, unfortunately for Myeon, it didn't quite work out. Nato has maintained this first place position all throughout. Nice rail grind from Myeon. That's going to give him an ever slight advantage. Is he going to be able to overtake onto jumping into this multitude of 360 ramps? No, they're both not going to do 360s. Except for the last one there, Myeon coming out in first place. Unfortunately for Nato, though, he maintains the lead as he crosses the finish line, and Myeon places second place here, unfortunately. Last time here at the Asphalt Series 2024, but amazing races by both these players. They really got my adrenaline pumping in that last section.
My goodness, congratulations to Nato here, really making a statement from what we've witnessed and taking it 2-0 over Myeon, which is definitely, I would say, an upset considering the reputation Myeon has. And that rail ride, I actually thought that this was going to be it. This is going to be the only way he has to actually be able to overtake, but still wasn't able to. And using a route which most players don't normally use.
Yeah, I was actually super surprised. As soon as Nato took that turn, I was like, uh-oh, he's in a bit of trouble. Maybe he's sort of pressured because Myeon is behind him. You don't want to get bumped. You don't want to get 360'd or anything like that. But turns out it was the right decision all along, and I must be going back to YouTube. I got to watch some more tutorials on how to take that track, I guess. But great job by Nato. What an absolutely phenomenal race. And maybe one of the dark horse conversations starts here for, can Nato actually go all the way?
Yeah, that's going to be the next question. And we've seen some very good indicators there. We had great refinements from him, good lines as well, good nitro management overall. Only like the one slip up at the end of the first track, but apart from that, there was pretty solid from what we've seen. Potential juggernaut going into this competition.
Absolutely, and it's probably that repetition of qualifying in those time-limited events. For these players, like I said earlier, this environment that they may be used to is time-limited events where they're just by themselves. It's just them versus the track itself. So when you're playing in that sort of environment, if you get messed up or maybe you're not feeling it quite well, you can always take a little bit of a break, go back next time, study the route once again. But of course, these players are going to go hundreds and hundreds of times. However, this is it. This is the only opportunity they have. There's not even a double elimination bracket. They have to be on their A game every millisecond throughout the race.
And it's only a best of 3 as well, so it's very little room for errors and slip-ups going into this competition. You could just play 2 races and then you're done. You're out. It's simple as that. So it's going to be very difficult. But we have to talk about, the Ferrari in general, with the Ferrari P99P as well, with Modificator as well, which is the original base version actually used in the Le Mans as well. But we're going to take a little bit of a backstory of this lovely hypercar and find out a little bit more about the story behind it.
We are the fastest on track by far. We won Le Mans!
And we do have an interview ready with Nato very shortly, just to find out his aspirations about going into the tournament and how he felt during that first series. Because it was definitely, we were saying upset considering Myeon's the reputation and how he's been performing in the Asia-Pacific region. So Nato, congratulations. I don't know if you expect it to be quite a comfortable victory, but how do you feel after that first match?
It's first time for me, and then I'm a little nervous, but I'm just happy to win the races.
And considering that was your first match, especially in an offline environment, do you feel a little bit more comfortable, relaxed, not as pressured now compared to when you entered the first match?
Just nervous.
I can understand it entirely, because every person, especially when you're a first time coming here, will be nervous. That's perfectly understandable. How do you feel that second race went? Because it went quite comfortable. You had the early lead, but you had the early lead in both tracks, and you seemed to maintain it quite well. How was you able to do that?
I tried to enjoy the races, so through the races, my feelings returned to happiness.
It's fantastic to hear, but congratulations. We'll be seeing you in the semi-final later on, and then we'll wait up for your matchup very shortly. So congratulations, and we'll see you later on. But for now, though, we're going to head back to Marth as we get back and ready for our second quarterfinal.
There we go, some amazing words from Nato, and honestly, I was a little surprised because from the gameplay that we saw, I thought there was going to be no nerves whatsoever. First time, I was, if I was a first time here at the offline, I would be shaking in my boots the whole time, but Nato looked cool as a cucumber throughout this whole race, but, sharing his thoughts and opinions about, being a little bit nervous coming in, which is totally understandable. I mean, I'm sure a lot of these players are nervous in and of themselves, even if they do have that previous experience as well. But great job by Nato to clean out that very early 2-0. I was very surprised.
Yeah, I was very surprised indeed. He seemed to be quite chilled. I think you can tell that at the very beginning, before that first track, he was very nervous. Sometimes you can use those nerves into adrenaline, and then you'll be feeling a little bit better afterwards. But it seems quite comfortable. I think the pressure is off his shoulders now that he's got that first series out the way, and technically has guaranteed a spot in the top 4 as well as the semi-finals. But now we're going to get into our second quarter-final, and I'm sure it's going to be another doozy as we head in now, and it will be Jagermeister, who's got a repertoire of victories in the Android scene back in the day, now versus the Big 71. And I'd love to know your thoughts, Marth, on this matchup.
See, this is one of those matchups that I think there's a little more than meets the eye. Jagermeister obviously has this huge resume, especially on Android, just coming in first place so many times, actually beating Future Flash in one of the recent online tournaments as well. But especially for the Big 71, he has been cooking. He has been telling me how many things he has been working on behind the scenes.
And we do have the info for each of these players just to get a little bit more in terms of how these players feel and what they actually prefer. And as you can see with Jagermeister, 23 from Poland, his favourite Ferrari being the Ferrari 458 Special. And going to his resume as well, I think he might be one of the players who also switched from Android. I'm not actually certain of that. But let's talk about him a little bit more, because back in the day, it's always him and Suchti or him and a player here in the Android scene back in the EMEA region. And now we're going to see what he can do now, because he did win the last European tournament, and he will be now against the big 71 from France to see exactly what he can do and what he can bring to the table.
Yeah, the Big 71, like I mentioned earlier, he's been in the kitchen cooking up some crazy things. We've especially seen how he's been breaking down the newest track, which is Chicago, one of the most beautiful tracks in the game, if I might say. But already he has discovered so many shortcuts with the BWO group. I was actually, again, super astonished to see how minute details this guy manages to uncover throughout the game. Things that I didn't even know were possible, he's doing like they're nothing.
I was watching him in a couple of races earlier, and this is probably a player you should be scared of. He seems extremely refined at the moment, and the nitro management overall has been looking very good. But he seems to be a very safe, very clean driver. None of that dirty business you normally witness from a lot of these players. But I could be, maybe he's saving that for these matches. I don't know. I'm sure we'll find out shortly anyway. But for Jagermeister, he'll definitely be on his toes and knows exactly what to expect here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you mentioned, Big 71 is a very, I would say, clinical player when it comes to gameplay. Like, nothing super crazy, but every single move he makes, he actually manages to make it perfectly. There's no, like, misinputs or anything like that from the Big 71. So when you're in this sort of competition, I think that's really important.
Yeah, it certainly is indeed. And you were talking about how he actually plays. And you are right, he's very methodical at what he does. But he does it in such clean fashion. But you don't really notice it too much from the naked eye. So it's going to be interesting to see how things are going to go. But for Jagermeister, he's been performing extremely well across the board. We do have the tracks for you here, where he's kicking things off at Tuscany over the hills, then Paris through the city. And to finish things off, it will be San Francisco Tunnel Jam for Smurf.
Absolutely, but Tuscany, I think, being the first track, this is going to be really interesting because we haven't seen it all that often in terms of esports because it is one of the newer tracks. So again, this is something where the experience comes into play. Most of these players have been playing, obviously, the classic tracks, if you will, San Francisco, US Midwest. These players know it like the back of their hands. But when it comes to those newer tracks, again, the Big 71 I have my eye on, especially for Tuscany, maybe if we see anything like Singapore, maybe even Chicago, because he studies these tracks like they're math equations. That's what he sees when he goes into these races. Honestly, it's absolutely insane how many details this guy gets right when it comes to shortcuts, optimal paths. I mean, he takes everything by the millisecond, not just looking at the big picture, but how can he improve every single corner, every single jump, every single move he makes. So honestly, if we're looking at those newer tracks, I got my money on Big 71.
Really? Oh, okay. So you're expecting an upset coming into this. Okay. So it's all that minute detail and how well he performs it with the consistency that he does is what you feel like is going to give him the edge.
Absolutely. I think that cooking in the kitchen is going to do him some good. I mean,
I'm sure Jagermeister's happy to hear that.
Absolutely. I mean, he's like, oh, this guy's been cooking. That's great because, you know, exactly about the different types of tracks that these players play. Jaeger was talking a little bit how those older tracks, you know, are the ones that all these players have studied for years and years and years. But with those newer tracks, it's something where maybe some players have experience on it, maybe some other players don't. So that's something to see, like, does Jagermeister have that disadvantage? But on the other hand, because obviously, you know, it's not just one versus the other who has, like, the track experience. But with Jagermeister, this guy's resume, I have a piece of paper here. It goes off the piece of paper. I mean, he is in every single tournament. He wins most of the tournaments, especially with the previous iterations of tournaments with only Android. He was winning almost all of them, especially in the European region.
It's basically bigger in my Christmas shopping list, isn't it? Let's be real. It was not really too much of a surprise. Mine's quite small. But yeah, we'll have to go into this anyway. But that's actually other thing as well with these two players. We know with Jagermeister, I'm not too sure with the Big 71 if the match he had on his resume in terms of all his tournament victories in the past is going to affect him too much. I don't really feel like it does from what I've witnessed from his performance and from what he's been doing in the terms of his practice. But it is very exciting to see him back and to see exactly what he can really bring. And what you said in terms of what he brings to the table, if he's that minute to every bit of detail and actually succeeds in everything he does, then we could be seeing a full 3 tracks going into this series.
Absolutely. Again, I wouldn't be surprised as well if maybe Big 71 takes that first victory on Tuscany, but then Jagermeister fights back in that second track. I can imagine that we will probably see the 3-track best of 3 this time around.
And that's the main thing as well. It's all about trial and error, especially with these new tracks. So it's like you can be one of the veteran experience, it doesn't matter, but we're going to go into our second quarterfinal. If you're just joining us, welcome. It's going to be a best of 3, and we've already maybe seen a wreck there, but we're going to be keeping our eyes on Big 71. Already just managed to close by, but he actually managed to wreck himself along the way, which is really, really unfortunate. And we were talking about his consistency with every bit of detail and how well he can perform some of these jumps, but looks like it's not going to pave his way in this first track. With Jagermeister now, with that shockwave, going into the perfect nitro as he goes across this next part of the course.
Man, I guess I have to eat my words. I mean, we saw that trick being pulled off by Big 71. It was looking like it was actually going to be executed very, very well, but unfortunately the car sort of popped up on that wall ride. You do have that physics every once in a while, but usually you can recover it, and most of these players have the tools and knowledge in order to do so. So Big 71, especially for Tuscany, he's really going to have to rely on Jagermeister making some sort of big mistake. You can't even see Jagermeister now on the minimap. He is so far ahead. And so for Jaeger, it's all about staying cool, calm, and collected, making sure you don't make any mistakes whatsoever. And we know that Jagermeister is so good. I mean, both you and I were casting one of his games earlier, and as soon as he takes the lead, he keeps hold of it. It's a question of can he get to the lead in the first place, which obviously now he has coming into the second lap.
Certainly has done this, now just drifting away here. Use that double nitro, now heading to the perfect nitro around this next corner. He's got a sizable lead here. As long as he plays it safe and secure, then he shouldn't really have too much of an issue. It just depends on how the Big 71 is going to be in terms of his refinements, but he's already wrecked himself again, so that's now going to be a guaranteed victory here for Jagermeister now as he goes across this next bend. But as you see from Big 71's perspective, it's pretty much one and done here now, as Jagermeister's now going to try and seal the deal with his first track of victory here. Big 71's going to be way too far behind, and now he's going to be considering his next steps going into the next track.
I do absolutely have to respect Big 71's, I guess, admiration for that attention to detail and just going for every little jump possible. You saw Jaeger was maybe a little bit unsure of the physics going into that one, so he didn't want to take the chance, and that worked out for him in the end. I would say if Big 71 managed to get that that jump just right, we would have seen maybe a half a second lead here, but it looks like this time around, Jagermeister taking that safer route, that manages to pay off in the long run as he crosses the finish line in our first match here on Tuscany.
And as most people would have predicted, especially with the viewers at home and here at the venue, that Jagermeister will be taking this first track. Just very unfortunate how that first jump went for the Big 71, and we can see how things are going to change up a little bit going into this one. So just having a quick brief conversation about that first track, but you can see a little bit of frustration, but we'll have to now try and have that mental reset going into the second track, because it's definitely doable. I always feel like with a lot of these top players, if there's any time to take them down, it's from the get-go before they start hitting up, warmed up, ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned about the frustrations, I can imagine there are definitely some, because as we were talking about earlier, when I spoke with Big 71, I was, explaining how it's like he approaches these tracks like math equations. He was talking about every single probability that you have to make every single little air time jump, every little air trick, everything like that. He probably thought in his head he had a very high probability of making that little trick in the first lap there, but unfortunately it was just that little small percentage of maybe bad luck or something like that. But darn, I do feel a little bit bad for Big 71, but props to him for at least going for something that bold. But on the other hand, Jagermeister just clean, precise driving like we've always seen from him throughout the years, and he manages to take it, and we're going to have to see if Big 71 can catch up in the second one. Ghost here in the first 10 seconds, and Big 71 getting a very early lead, taking advantage of the incredible acceleration of the 499P Modificata, and great job using that perfect nitro and drift to get around the corner, using Shockwave to get every little airtime they can. And it looks like Jagermeister isn't too far behind as we go into the sharp corner. It's really going to be important how they use Shockwave, and they do use it right out of the gate here. And Jagermeister trying to do everything he can. Actually misses that Shockwave, that nitro bottle there. That might be very important, because as you can see, he doesn't get Shockwave. He won't get to that airtime as much as possible. So Big 71 getting a very early lead so far here in Paris.
Done indeed. He's still maintaining that lead. How long forward is going to be the next question here? Jagermeister's just on his tail by a few tenths of a second. It was going to go round him, but instead he's actually taking an entirely different route with Big 71 and using that shockwave. Still managed to keep a hold of it around this next corner. But let's see what Jagermeister can do to try and catch back up. Literally about another tenth of a second as he's directly behind him now, using that perfect nitro trick on from behind with the shockwave. But Big 71 just playing it safe with the double nitro after that previous jump is. So the question is going to be for Big 71, will he be able to continue this lead?
Oh, Jagermeister barely clipping the edge there a couple of feet back. That may have hurt his speed a little bit, and if you don't hit any sort of walls for a while, you get something called a perfect run. That sort of gives you a little bit of the boost to that nitro efficiency there. But with Jagermeister using Shockwave a bit earlier than Big 71, again, we're seeing ever so encroachment here on Big 71's lead position. So going into that second lap, they're both pretty neck and neck. You only see a couple tenths of a second here in terms of differences, but I think Big 71 managed to get a couple of more barrel rolls. That's going to give him some more nitro to use here on this second lap.
See both of them hammering away at that brake nitro trick during that first part or the last part of that lap. Head into the second lap now. We'll have to see what Big 71 can do. Can continue maintaining this lead. It's been doing well so far. We could be getting the third track, which we've always wanted here. And Jagermeister is actually falling behind by only by a couple more tenths of a second. But it's not really too much here. Jagermeister has actually decided to take the same route as Big 71 compared to before when he went on the left-hand side. With Big 71 now using that shockwave to go up this next jump. Doesn't get as many barrel rolls as Jagermeister, which means that Jagermeister will get a little bit more nitro during this last portion of the second lap.
Yeah, you can see Big 71 braking a little bit earlier and drifting around the corner ever so slightly sooner just because he doesn't have that nitro afforded to him. But Jagermeister opting to not drift until Shockwave actually accelerating quickly out. And you can see Big 71 taking a different route here, opting to go to the same one as Jagermeister, even though it actually kept his lead last time around. Both players getting that Shockwave barrel roll, but actually Big 71 getting a little bit more nitro efficiency, managing to get that top speed in the air ever so slightly better. And this was just absolutely clinical racing from both these players, but it just seems like Big 71 was taking those corners ever so sharply, just ever so more efficiently, especially with that nitro efficiency. As you mentioned earlier, getting a couple more barrel rolls gets him that shockwave ability, and Jagermeister clipping those corners, that's not going to get him that perfect nitro every once in a while, or perfect run, I should say. Doing a great job using shockwave to get him to the top speed, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think Big 71 is going to tie up the series.
Excited it's going to here is getting to the final portion here of this last lap. Jagermeister's still behind him, but it's actually drove behind a little bit more, a few more tenths of a second, and the Big 71 is looking to win it here in Paris on this second track, and he does. He ties things up in this series, and it's all to play for as we head into the third and final track. Managing to reset that mental fortitude, going into it now, an entirely different ball game in comparison to what we saw in that first track, a night and day difference.
There you go. You can see him nodding his head. He's got the groove of everything.
He's
starting
now.
to get going. Exactly. The nerves are shaking off. That first track is done and dusted. It is now tied up. So everything is going to come down to this last track here on San Francisco. And both these players now getting ready to go into that track. It's going to be an interesting conversation because we do have a very good mix of those sort of very sharp corners like we've seen earlier in Paris, but also some great opportunity to let this top speed shine for the 499P Modificata. Here we get into the second track shortly, and yeah, the nerves are gone. It's now everything down to the wire. Every millisecond counts.
This will be a huge upset if Big 71 manages to take this third track. So we're now underway here, starting off from Big 71's perspective. He is in the lead currently. This early on, coming out with a shockwave as well over this next jump. Must get at least one barrel roll. Depends how many barrel rolls Jagermeister was able to get in the meantime, but still going away behind him. Manages to keep his ground, keep his footing there. As he gets around this next bend with the perfect nitro here. And he's still behind, but this is what the exact issue that Jagermeister had last time on that second track with that extra bounce, but manages to safely land.
Yeah, we saw Big 71 getting those clean corner cuts actually a couple of seconds ago, whereas Jagermeister actually had to swerve to avoid the wall. And maybe that was a good thing because he didn't wreck, but on the other hand, it allowed the Big 71 to command an early lead as we go into this hairpin corner, shockwaving into our second lap here into the tunnel section. Jagermeister still, I'd say maybe about half a second behind. Not anything too crazy or insurmountable, but if you're the Big 71 on the other side, you've got to be flowing with confidence. This is your time to shine.
And he realizes how far behind he is in comparison to where he's positioned at the moment. Use that double nitro to get around this next bend into the shockwave, and this is looking very good indeed. Single barrel roll coming at the next corner with the shockwave, and Jagermeister had to go for that straightforward barrel roll just to get some extra momentum and nitro there, but it wasn't going to be enough, and now trail behind by a lot more in comparison, probably by about 2 seconds here at least, as he's trying to really breach that gap. But just absolutely no end in sight for Jagermeister. Big 71 continuing on the warpath here on this final part of the lap.
What a wonderful race by Big 71, and absolutely no mistakes whatsoever. Clean, clinical, precise racing as we cross the finish line here to conclude our best of 3 between these two amazing players, and the Big 71 will continue. What an incredible upset.
Yeah, managed to win by about 2.1 seconds. That was unreal. And it was really funny at the same time how we witnessed that first track and how it was going to go, and then just managed to maintain composure and go into the second and third track like it was nothing. It was unbelievable stuff. So sadly, Jagermeister will be out of the competition. Commiserations to him. but he managed to qualify here today, which was the main thing, of course. And now the Big 71 will be seeing him in the semi-finals later on. And I'm obviously very curious to see who's going to stop him at this point.
Absolutely. I mean, this is one of those conversations we had earlier on in the day was we have so many dark horses for this time around. We have so many big potentials for players who are either made it for their first time or players like the Big 71 who do have that previous tournament experience, but maybe facing against those big rivals like Jagermeister, you sort of have that little bit of unknown. But like I mentioned, I was talking to Big 71. He was cooking for so long. He has put thousands of hours into the game recently. He's actually made his own little group. They go through every single track. They get every single shortcut right. They get every single little detail possibly imaginable that they can do to shave every millisecond off their track time. And it showed right here. He had every corner cut precisely executed, whereas Jagermeister, every once in a while we saw maybe hit a wall, maybe scrape against the side of a railing. That caused not to get a perfect run, to get that extra nitro. Therefore, Big 71 got way more shockwaves, I would say, got up to his top speed a lot quicker.
And that's the great thing about this as well, with the time invested and being able to produce those results as well. Because sometimes the results will not show, and it's very difficult to perform in the way he had done, especially in a live environment, especially in a tournament environment, so to speak. But actually being able to produce that and be able to produce those results as well, along with that time invested, it's just great to see, isn't it?
Absolutely. And look, the hard work absolutely pays off. So great job by Big 71. Commiserations to Jagermeister. I'm sure we'll see him in the future again. It's certainly no feat here or no slouch to even qualify for the tournament this time around.
No, and we can see why he did qualify. And that was absolutely incredible from what we've seen already. Would you say 2 upsets? Probably 2 upsets, you know, so far. We had Myeon from South Korea now out of competition, and Jagermeister also out of competition. 2 potential favourites going into this, and now we're already out. And now these 2 players making already an impact. Even winning their first series or even not getting knocked out in the quarterfinals is going to be a huge feat for themselves, but not only in this competition, but with future events as well in the future.
Absolutely, and one of the conversations we have in those previous tournaments is usually they do have that double elimination bracket, whereas this time around we only have that single elimination. So it's one and done for these players. Here we're taking a look at some of the highlights you can see from pairs, especially Big 71 doing a great job to take that 1-to-1 lead and making sure that he can get that series in his hands. And obviously here with San Francisco as well, just great racing by Big 71, concluding the series here and managing to take the victory. And there we go, Big 71 celebrating his victory. Great job as we hand it to Lethal for an interview.
And I am here with the Big 71. Not a bad first match, mate. I was not really too sure what to expect considering the circumstances coming here as well. And it was a very tough opponent to begin with. But how did you feel going into the second track? Because I know with the first track, you had a little bit of slip up at the very beginning. It happens. But how was you able to reset that mental fortitude?
I knew I would go very well on that Paris track. It's the longest track in the game, so I knew that as long as I was consistent, it would be fine. So I just played as well as I could and then brought the win.
And what happened during that first portion of the first track? Because we know we had a few issues there. It's very hard to climb back, especially when you actually managed to get that wreck. But what actually happened during that first portion of the first track?
Yeah, the issue is that the barrel caused my car to do a barrel, but a weird barrel, and I landed on the side, which caused me to flip on the wall. So yeah, that's just the stuff that happens. I should have avoided it, just like Jagger. He did great on the first one, yeah.
It's one of those things, isn't it? Let's be honest, it happens to the best of us, doesn't it? Especially in those kind of circumstances. And going into track number 3, what was your game plan going into it and to try and secure that victory?
Just get ahead and stay safe, be as consistent as I could, not taking risk, and defending my place once I was first.
Well, you certainly did that. Congratulations once again. We'll be seeing you later on in the semi-finals, as we're now going to head back to Marth as we get underway with our 3rd quarter-final.
Some great insights by the Big 71 as I click my unmute button there. Usually got to remember to click that. I should be a professional and know that. But anyway, great job by Big 71, an amazing insight into that interview, and commiserations to Jagermeister as well. I mean, both these players played excellently, and we saw immediately after that when you were interviewing him about just immediately into analysis mode, like what can I do better? Should I have maybe gone for that barrel roll in that first track? Should I have avoided it like Jagermeister did? So great job by Big 71. Again, maybe a dark horse in terms of taking this whole entire tournament. Now that Jagermeister is out of the picture, unfortunately not a double elimination bracket. One of the heavy favorites going out earlier here in the, yeah, it's just unfortunate, but Big 71, great job.
Unbelievable. I'm really impressed with what we've seen from him so far. And he seems to be very sure of himself about what needs to be done to accomplish these victories. And, you know, for the little experience he has, I'm gobsmacked, really am, but also really impressed at the same time of what he can do. And we'll be seeing him later on in the semi-final against Nato later, which, again, another dark horse, which we did not expect coming into this competition. And now we're going to start off with our third quarter-final very shortly. And with this next one, we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the section here to find out exactly how things are going to occur, as we will have a matchup in the third quarter-final. It will be Elite Joe versus Onio. We can say 2 veterans in the scene.
Absolutely. Onio doing a great job of actually managing to participate in both Asphalt Series back-to-back 23 and 24. But Elite Joe on the other side here, NA's last hope. I mean, I got to have some bias towards Elite Joe coming from North America myself, but this guy's resume is absolutely stacked.
He's had some incredible placements over the last few months as well. We know this is North America's last hope. Well, I say last hope, but he's the only North American representative here, resigning from Mexico. And we'll have to see how he's going to perform. And I know that you'll be rooting for him, so it's fine. We'll let you be biased.
I'll be a little bit biased here, of course. I mean, look, NA's last hope. We got to root for our boys here back home. But honestly, though, here's the problem: is when we're from North America, we have to fly over here. We have to fly over that little green-blue pond we call the Atlantic Ocean. So jet lag is setting in for everyone from North America. I mean, I do absolutely feel bad as well for Myeon as well, coming from Korea. That was a 22-hour journey. So that's something you have to keep in mind as well for a lot of these players. Do they have that sort of jet lag? Can they even shake it off? I mean, I know exactly if I'm playing in that sort of environment, my adrenaline is spiked. I'm going 100% no matter what happens. But for Elite Joe, he was looking a little sleepy earlier today. So it's like, can he actually manage to get that adrenaline pumping? Can he get into the groove of competition before the game starts? Because if he can, and if Elite Joe shows up today, it's going to be a very clean race, I'd say, for him. I mean, Onio does a great job of qualifying, but he doesn't qualify like super often. When he does, though, he puts his best foot forward. But in terms of multiplayer, he doesn't have that big presence, whereas Elite Joe does have that experience.
Well, let's take a look at the info from these players as well. We've spoken a lot about their past, their veteran experience, their wealth of knowledge on the game. And you can see as well, 25 residing from Mexico, and his favorite Ferrari being the Ferrari Tributo. And it's funny that, like, no one has the same favorite Ferrari car. Everyone's got something different, isn't it? I've never seen one of the same yet. Watch this now. Any money now is going to find out that actually it's going to be something the same. But it's actually not going to be the same. With Onio, we saw him last year at the last Asphalt Series as well on the Windows platform, 32 from Germany. His favorite Ferrari in the Ferrari Enzo Ferrari. And we can see now exactly what he's going to be able to bring, because it's nice to see Onio again. I've not actually seen him in quite a while, so it's nice to see another familiar face once again.
Absolutely, and it does bring into that conversation. He's qualified before, he's qualified now. I mean, that's no slouch, that's no, like, bad feat or anything like that. It's just with Elite Joe, we've seen consistent qualifications throughout the entire year, whereas Onio's had that 1-year gap. Is that going to be a questionable factor coming into this matchup? I will say, though, those 2 favorite Ferraris, there is a Ferrari for everyone. There is so many great cars in the lineup that Ferrari has. I mean, Ferrari Enzo Ferrari is such a classic one.
It certainly is indeed. I think most people will especially recognize that vehicle in a nutshell. If they don't, what are you doing? But now we're going to find out now in terms of predictions. We know that with Elite Joe, how well he's done this year. He's been phenomenal. He's been absolutely lights out for the entirety of this year. And it's been a pleasure to watch him improve, especially over the last few months. But before we talk a little bit further, let's take a look at the track to see exactly how things are going to potentially unfold in this best of 3. So we're going to be heading first into Cairo for Ancient Wonders, and then Buenos Aires for Stadium Lap. And then finally, and that is going to be a crazy one for whoever's on the back foot, it's going to be Greenland Fire and Ice.
This is quite the track lineup. We have Cairo, and usually when players think of Cairo, they think of top speed, but that's usually for 1,000 minarets. But with actually Ancient Wonders, that's a little bit more of a twisty track. There's some curves, there's some corners, there's a lot of, I guess, tight close quarters combat going on there with the cars bumping into each other. So again, when you're on the track by yourself with the qualifiers, that's not too much of a big deal. But this time in the live environment, you're going to have a player right behind you or maybe right in front of you. That's going to be a problem that these players have to solve in real time.
It certainly will do, indeed. And this is going to be a tough one for Onio. We know that what he can do. He knows how good Elite Joe is and what he can really bring on to in game. But now for Onio, we'll have to see how he's going to go, because it's been quite a while since he's been away from an offline environment. It might actually been since last year, since 18 months ago. So it's been quite a while, but we know he's very cool, calm and collected kind of guy anyway. Nothing really phases him or affects him too much, so we'll have to see how things are going to go for him here. But for Elite Joe, the juggernaut here from the NA scene, we're going to see exactly how he's going to perform as we're going to kick things off from Onio's perspective with only a few tenths behind Elite Joe. Comes out with a shockwave as he goes underneath this bridge. Good 360 coming out. A little bit of a droppage in terms of mileage, but good shockwave to make up for it. And now he's going to go around this next corner with shockwave once again into the perfect nitro.
Oh, Onio with that extra 360 there. Sometimes you don't want the car to do that because you want to immediately go into the corner with that 360 angle. But Elite doing a great job of taking advantage of the shockwave, getting up to the top speed using the 499P's acceleration. And oh no, Onio actually manages to mess up the 360, trying to do a little bit of a floaty drift, but actually pushes himself into the wall. You get a lot of friction there, and unfortunately, that slows him down quite a bit. Elite is already passing onto the second lap, whereas Onio is just getting to that right now. So Onio has a lot of catching up to do, and with Ancient Wonders, it's one of the shorter variants of Cairo. So Onio is going to have to pull out some crazy airtime in order to catch up, or actually maybe hope that Elite Joe makes some sort of mistake. But we know Elite Joe, he's not going to make a mistake.
Yeah, very rare we see a mistake from Elite Joe. But saying that now, hopefully we won't jinx him during this last portion of the second lap. But we've seen some crazy things in our time in competition, especially in competitive asphalt play, but we'll see how things are going to go. Onio's just praying for that at this stage because it's going to be very difficult for him to close the gap. Just praying that Elite Joe will wreck at some stage in the last 20% of this course. And even then, though, it's going to be a very difficult task at hand here, doing everything he can in case that luck comes into fruition. But Elite Joe just performed extremely well, still playing it quite safe to make sure he'll maintain that lead and take this first track victory. But I think everyone here, especially if he is at home, probably expected this outcome. And now Elite Joe has won the first track in this best of 3 series.
Great job by Elite Joe taking this first track here on Cairo. With Onio, though, the conversation starts to rise up in terms of, does that sort of rust manage to, wipe itself off maybe into the second track? I mean, look, we saw earlier today with the Myeon versus Nato matchup, with Nato having their first time here, maybe Onio's feeling that sort of pressure of being in the first time for a year. But Nato, on the other hand, took that second track very handedly, I might add, and then closed out the series right after. So with Onio, can he make that reverse sweep? We're going to have to find out, of course, once we get into that second track. But for Elite Joe, you're sitting pretty. You're sitting just up there in that 1-0 lead so far. Doesn't seem like jet lag's affecting him so far today, which is good to see.
Yeah, I always kind of felt like in competition, when you do travel internationally from an event, it's the adrenaline which kicks in and kind of defeats the jet lag. Like maybe like a few hours beforehand, you'll sit there in a complete daze, which we've all been there, especially with international events. But for him now, he was a little bit tired, which is understandable. But now the fact that he's now in game mode, or beast mode going into the first series, especially for himself, but now he's going to be able to wake up a little bit and then let that adrenaline kick in and see how he can perform. And now it's a great way to start off the first track for him going into this series.
Absolutely. This is going to give you a boost of confidence that otherwise you might not have. Well, I guess on the other hand, with Onio, you don't have that boost of confidence. You maybe have those self-doubts starting to arise of like, maybe I should have tried to qualify throughout the entire year, or at least, getting that experience would have helped me a lot. Whereas the conversation for Elite Joe, he just won the North American tournament a couple months ago. He has that experience under his belt. He has that recent experience under his belt in terms of this live 1-versus-1 environment. Whereas again, Onio, the conversation always goes back to, it's been a year. So again, that might come into play here. But the other thing I want to talk about is, we were talking about these players head-to-head, but actually a couple months ago, these players wouldn't be able to. So with Asphalt Legends Unite specifically, they are now able to compete. Here we go into Buenos Aires, one of the shorter tracks in the game, so every corner is going to count. Elite Joe taking a very early lead, doing a great job cutting that corner as precisely as possible, using Shockwave to get up to the top speed, going over that stadium, and Onio right into the back tire, actually manages to overtake on the inside. What a great play, does a 360. Elite Joe's going to return the favor, going into that inside line, managing to overtake once again. Onio is right back on top though. Oh, can they cut the corner closer? He will, but Elite Joe is managing to stay steady here, not doing any sort of mistakes whatsoever. Both these players doing a great job making sure to get every barrel roll, every piece of nitro they can, but it seems like Elite Joe just manages to creep out ever so slightly ahead of Onio. And as we head onto the second lap here in a couple of seconds, like I said, this is one of the shorter tracks in the game, so every single minute detail is going to count. And Onio, unfortunately, doing that 360 is going to lose him a little bit of speed, whereas Elite Joe is sitting pretty here up in that lead for the second lap.
And you saw Elite Joe earlier trying to body block Onio. Onio is still able to get round him, but is at least a second behind. Elite Joe won't have to worry about body blocking this time round up that last ramp with that perfect nitro now, with a comfortable lead about a second to a second and a half here, with Onio now still trying to close the gap in every way he can with this shockwave around these last two corners, but not really doing himself any favours here at this stage. And as you said, with it being such a short track, it's very little room for him to try and close that gap, which he has done by about half a second. But as I say, that Onio is sadly wrecked, and that is going to be it for him in this second track and this series. And now we're going to wait for him to finish on up here, with Elite Joe finishing the race and winning the second track and taking victory in this series 2-0.
Great racing by Elite Joe, and props to Onio as well for showing up, because he is an absolute masterclass when it comes to precise racing. But Elite Joe manages to take it. Love out there for every one of his fans as well. But great job by Elite Joe. Something I do want to mention is that with those sort of control methods, maybe that tilt to steer actually gave him a little bit of advantage, and especially in those corners. You get a little bit more precise detail if you sort of know the device very well. You have the weight that you can shift back and forth. So great job by Elite Joe to take advantage of that. And again, props to Onio. Great racing, but it's just those little tiny details that add up over time. Nothing major, no smashing into walls where you shouldn't have or anything like that, but it's ever so slightly maybe scraping a corner here, maybe the tire goes a different direction there, and just those things add up over the course of the 2-lap period to make it so that Elite Joe manages to take it cleanly with a 2-0 lead.
Yeah, commiserations to Onio, but at least he managed to qualify here. Even just qualifying here was just ridiculous in itself in terms of how he was able to, because there was over 2 million players trying to compete for one of the 8 spots going into his back throughout August and September. And that's crazy. The amount of players who had to make it through, and still some of the familiar names able to make it here still is just phenomenal.
Absolutely. They have to fight tooth and nail to get to these qualifiers. But the cool thing is, like we've seen with Nato and Requiem, which we'll see in the future a bit, they are firstly qualifying for their first tournament here, so everyone can be a pro player. And that's the amazing thing about Asphalt Legends Unite Esports.
And what's even funny, it is an interesting stat, the fact that during those qualifiers, there was a total of 15 million races in terms of playtime, equated to 40 plus years. That's actually older than me, so it actually feels I feel a little bit better now.
Older than you? How? No, whoa. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah,
it's
40
okay.
years.
I will accept my age. But it is just incredible. Like, that stat alone is just mad. The amount of time invested by all those players to try and make it to this event alone is unheard of.
And that's not even counting the theory crafting. Like I was talking to Big 71 earlier, those calculations of, like, you know, every couple of laps you have this amount of chance to get this certain trick, or if you wreck the track or wreck the car, and then you can actually manage to, like, change the modifier and everything like that. Like, that's just blows my mind with the insane level of detail that he was crafting. So outside of the game, also thousands of hours going into theory crafting, getting all of those perfect routes, and then learning from each other. That's one of the massive things as well about this community, about Asphalt Legends Unite, is if you join the game, you can join a club. And joining the club means joining a community of like-minded players who actually share information throughout the history of Asphalt. So every player is sharing information for every player to benefit from, and that's one of the nice things about the community.
And we're going to jump into the replays as well, because from Elite Joe, it was quite a comfortable victory. The first track definitely was with the wreck from Onio to begin with, but then Elite Joe was actually managed to change things up entirely, and it was just an incredible feat in itself.
Yeah, Onio, again, with those little places there, like I said, hitting those walls every once in a while, but Elite Joe just doing a great job of that clean racing. One of the things that I want to mention is he's so good at counter steering. As soon as he gets into the corner or out of a corner, he manages to flip back his device in order to straighten out and get to the top speed as close or as quickly as possible. Whereas Onio on that controller, every once in a while, you know, you'll have the stick drift, or you'll have the ability to flip the stick back and forth to get that precise movement. But Elite Joe, with that tilt to steer, actually does a great job of counter steering, and as you can see, great job here in Buenos Aires. So that was a great series, but we have Lethal here with an interview.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. Joined with Onio again, and sadly for you, the road has ended. It was a little bit unfortunate for you. What do you think led to your demise during that first track? Because the second track, you seem to be looking a lot better. We know that Elite Joe was body blocking a little bit at the very beginning during one of the jumps at the very early on in that first lap. But what do you think led to that demise in the first track? What was the cause of you to sadly lose that and cause that wreck?
I'm not exactly sure what the reason was in the end, but I could just figure that somehow the pressure got to me. I especially trained this map, not with the car obviously, but maybe the way I trained was not the right one. actually for this car. So I just have to state that in the end I still lack the overall map and car combination knowledge, and maybe I could have done anything else at the start. As you saw, he was so much faster at some starts, so yeah, I really have to go back to the scribbling board.
Yeah, back to the drawing board. We all have to at some point, don't we? And what did you think about the vehicle itself, the Ferrari 499P Modificata? What do you think of it in terms of how it plays and how it runs on these tracks?
I would say it's a very handling-oriented car. I like these normally, but yeah, the way it floats, it's while drifting is really nice. Even for me as a player who comes back and has to learn the game again, it still feels really, really nice. And yeah, if I hadn't made the wrong decisions, then maybe I would have come farther. But
it's fine, these things happen. I think, like I said, we've all been there once before. And final question from me to you, in terms of how would you have trained differently in comparison to how you said you were training beforehand?
I think I just have to play more. Like, I always try to use the private lobbies to actually get to know, with the few cars that I have, how yeah, to take the tracks, but I maybe lack just the experience of an actual multiplayer race, I would say.
And that's understandable. But in all fairness, you qualified here today, so it was great to have you on board once again. Always nice to have a familiar veteran face, as always. And now we are going to get ready for our fourth quarter-final very shortly, as we're now headed back to Marth to get ready for that next match.
For that amazing insight. And I always love when Onio speaks because he has such honesty as well, great character as well. Love to see him back, as you mentioned earlier, Lethal. But yeah, commiserations to Onio, especially for doing a loser's interview. Sometimes you see esports players are a little bit shy to that sort of thing, but Onio, again, being very honest and open about maybe what went wrong in terms of changing the training regimen, maybe needing to train a bit more. So it's just great to see him once again here. Commiserations to him. But honestly, qualifying, like you said, 2 million plus players qualifying, getting to the top 8 is no small feat. I mean, that is a monumental task in and of itself.
And there's well over 2 million as well. It's just incredible the amount of players and talent which is on board to try and make it here. And the fact that we've only got 8 is just unheard of. But we are going to get ready for our next quarter-final matchup. And it's going to be the last one here before we make a start on the semi-finals. So we do have Requiem versus the one, and we know quite well with the victories he's had all year long, it is Future Flash.
This is a pretty obvious matchup to maybe, I guess, predict. I mean,
yeah.
You look at Future Flash's resume, almost every single tournament he manages to qualify for, he wins. There are a couple of exceptions here and there, but as we take a look at the player info, we'll maybe figure out a bit more about the history with these players. Both Requiem, age 20, country of Japan. Like we said, first time Japanese players have actually qualified for the finals here at Asphalt Series, so it's quite an incredible feat, and I'm very curious to see. But the favorite Ferrari, Testarossa, what a classic 80s car. I love that car so much. Saw it at a car show a couple of weeks ago, and it's so beautiful. It had that streaks of design back and forth, and it's just amazing. But we'll also take a look at Future Flash's resume here, age 23, country of Greece. Again, representation from all over the world, which is awesome. And of course, favorite Ferrari being the Ferrari SF90 Stradale, one of the quickest accelerating cars in the world, and advancing the technology for hybrid powertrains as well.
This is what I love about it. I said it before, like every single player doesn't have the same Ferrari vehicle. Everyone's got their own unique type and what they prefer as well. Obviously mine's for the Ferrari F50, but we saw from them that all these players have something different. They all have a personal favorite here, as we will be heading now into the tracks to see exactly what these two players are going to be heading into. And we're going to be starting off with the US Midwest. It will be Canyon launch, then switching over to Rome, capital of the world. And to finish things up, it will be New York Quantum Jumps.
We are seeing a little bit of a common theme with this track selection. Canyon launch and Quantum Jumps. Airtime is going to be so important this time around, especially for that Canyon launch, that first track. These first 5 seconds matter so much because the ramp hits very, very shortly. But with these players having that first pace perspective, you can see right there, they're going to try and hit the ramp at the same exact time. Will they manage to get the barrel roll? Yes, they will. But Future Flash gets so much more airtime. As a result, he manages to get ever so slightly ahead. But Requiem, trying to cut the inside line, crashes into the walls there. So unfortunate for Requiem. Tried to get every little millisecond out of that. Great attempt to try and cut that inside line. But for Future Flash, getting that early lead, getting that early top speed advantages blocks Requiem from that perspective. And unfortunately, now Requiem is a couple of seconds back. But great job by Future Flash to take advantage of it, not slowing down, of course. We know this guy, as soon as he takes the lead, he's going to maintain it.
For Requiem is a little bit unfortunate about. I do respect the play though. His pride got in the way for him to try and push him out the way to get into that tunnel first. He knew that if he didn't, he would be trailing behind by at least half a second, maybe even a second depending on the circumstances, but now he's going to be falling behind by at least 3 seconds. So it's going to be a very difficult task here, and especially against one of the heavy favourites in Future Flash. For Requiem, this is going to be an almost impossible task.
Yeah, this is going to be a Herculean task at that to try and catch up. Now, we do have an entire second lap upcoming, and this time around, obviously, the players aren't going to be neck and neck trying to fight for that barrel, as you're going to see coming up right here. Future Flash actually opting to skip it. Now, what you'll notice is that as soon as these players get a commanding lead, they're going to play safe. They're going to not try to wreck, not do anything too super risky or anything like that. So great job by Future Flash to keep that in mind going on to that second lap, because if he did manage to wreck there like Requiem did in that previous lap, we do have a conversation for if Requiem can catch up. But unfortunately for him, Future Flash just knows every single track like the back of his hand. And he also has the experience of being in that first place position, playing safely, whereas Requiem doesn't have that, that advantage. But we did see earlier today, bit of an upset. Could that happen for the rest of this series?
Yeah, we'll have to find out after this track as well. Future Flash just maintaining that lead and making sure that he doesn't really give up his position, but surely he won't at this stage considering how much of the track is left. But Requiem has done a pretty good job considering how far behind he was originally, but it's going to be way too late now after that little kerfuffle they had at the first portion going into that tunnel on the first lap. But for Future Flash, he's going to be looking pretty confident, pretty easy, and now he's going to be heading in and he'll be taking the first track victory here in style in this last quarterfinal.
Just another day in the office for Future Flash. You can see he's not even getting out of his chair. He's not super excited or anything like that. He knows exactly what's about to happen. He knows the victory is in the palm of his hand. All he has to do is play consistently because he is consistently the best. Now for Requiem there, on the other hand, it's going to be a Herculean task of trying to defeat Future Flash here, because it's one of the most crazily, I guess, lopsided matchups. I mean, we have that dark horse conversation we had earlier today with that upset with Nato versus Myeon, but this time around, it's just maybe even too much of that task to ask of Nato. Yeah,
it certainly will be indeed. Yeah, the task is going to be very difficult for him. We know that he's not to the point where it's going to be a miracle worker, but we'll have to see what he can do to really perform. We need to see some of those indicators to really true and really tell exactly what potential he has in terms of his pedigree of skill to bring to the table to really make a difference here against Future Flash. But we know what he's like at the moment. This year, his trophy cabinet must be just filled to the brim at this point, looking to try and add another to the tally. And a couple of favourites now for Future Flash has already been knocked out here. So, you know, you could argue that this could be his event to lose, depending on the circumstances. But Requiem now is going to be kicking things off here and see exactly what he can do now to maintain this lead in comparison. And we know how great of a driver he can be. We saw his refinements in that first track, even though he was the one who actually was falling behind after that first wreckage. But let's see what Future Flash can do now to try and overtake Requiem.
Here we go, onto Rome, and actually both these players took an unexpected route. Usually you'll see them go alongside the riverbank, try to get as much airtime as possible, but both of them knew they could take advantage of the 499P incredible handling statistic there, and so they actually both opted for that inner route to try and take advantage of the 499P Modificata's insane handling, and great job by both of them as well, because they executed it perfectly. Nobody running into anything like that, but Future Flash trying to overtake with that airtime, manages to do an incredible overtake, taking advantage of the airtime ever so slightly, slipping past Requiem, and now it's Requiem versus the world. He has to do everything he can to catch up in this second lap. It's not going to be long here until we hit that second lap, but Future Flash is going to be gunning for that victory, that quick 2-0. But for Requiem, he has everything to lose here. This is going to be a Herculean task to get ahead.
Certainly will be indeed. Requiem now still directly behind him here, using that break nitro trick to get across this next jump with the shockwave, and Future Flash still able to hold on to this lead, and he's still got a fair amount of portion into this second lap to try and fulfill in order to get to the finish line here. Just managed to dodge that last vehicle, so at least it won't destroy their mileage going forward, that momentum which they desperately need. Good barrel rolls coming up from Future Flash with the shockwave again into that break nitro. And now let's see what he can do here to go around then this next bend with the shockwave. Managed to keep a nice straight line, but Requiem's actually directly underneath him. Future Flash had a lot more airtime, so we'll get a little bit more nitro as they get around this next corner.
this next corner here, we saw that Future Flash actually overtook Requiem on that last lap. So I'm going to be curious to see how both these players approach it. Will Future Flash try and go for another overtake or another airtime? Yes, he will. Requiem does the same thing. They're actually right neck on neck. Requiem trying to go for that inside line, and Requiem actually 360s to knock down Future Flash in the last part of the second lap. Oh my gosh, Requiem does a great job eliminating Future Flash from competition in this second track. So it's going to be a tied game here, 1-1. This last track is going to mean everything as Future Flash crosses the finish line in second place and Requiem taking the first place position.
Goodness me, this is like upset city potentially during all these quarterfinals. I don't think anyone would have predicted any of this at all in the slightest. And if you said yes, you did, you're lying. Don't lie to me, please, with the viewers at home. I'm sure they'll probably be in much shock at the moment. But remember, they've still got another track left to go. This will be the third and final track in this last quarterfinal to see who's going to make it through into the semi-finals later on today. But my goodness, we've definitely got a close affair on our hands.
Absolutely. I mean, you can see Future Flash maybe a little bit flabbergasted, like, who is this guy coming out of nowhere, 360ing me, the king of asphalt, just absolutely eliminating from competition. But it all comes down to this last track. Both players getting ready, sort of getting into that zone of concentration, making sure to get rid of the nerves, get rid of any doubts in their minds of whether or not they could take the race. Again, talking about that single elimination here on New York, Requiem doing everything he can to take advantage of the airtime. But again, as we saw previously, Future Flash going above and beyond, consistently taking that first place position. Now these corners are going to matter ever so slightly. Looks like both players taking very even lines. No inside position overtakes, but Requiem is positioning himself right now to take that inside line. Future Flash realizes that early on and manages to block him from that case. Ooh, we got a 360 and a knockdown from Requiem once again. That might secure this last track for him.
The potential heavy favourite here in this competition is now trailing behind, with Requiem now on the forefront here on a mission to try and secure this series victory, as it really has been upset city for the entirety of this event so far, and Requiem is looking to try and do another one in this last quarter-final. Future Flash doing absolutely everything in his power now to try and claw back.
Great job by Requiem, taking advantage of the knockdown mechanic to get ahead of his competition early on. I mean, last time he waited till the very last minute to get it secured in the bag, but this time around, right out of the gate, he doesn't want anything to do with Future Flash. He's going to throw him in the bin and wave him goodbye in his rearview mirror. But Future Flash trying to get up to that top speed, airtime especially, trying to catch up to Requiem. But I don't think there's any hope unless Requiem manages to make some big mistake or wreck early on here into the second lap. But again, that knockdown really decided this last track, I think.
It certainly did as well. Future Flash almost had it in the bag, and that last track could have secured that series victory, but that 360 earlier is what took us to this third and final track, and Future Flash still trying to claw back and try and breach the gap, but still ain't able to close it out at all in the slightest. Requiem is just treating it like a time trial at the moment and not really playing it too safe here during this last portion. There's only 17% of the track left remaining. Future Flash has already wrecked once again, which is going to seal the deal, and that is going to be it. Requiem will be winning this third and final track and the series to head into the semi-finals.
What an incredible sequence of events coming out from Requiem. 2 knockdowns in a row to secure that victory over the king of asphalt himself, Future Flash, as he crosses the finish line here in first place. What an amazing race by both these players. Great job to put on a show, especially for the audience as well. And yeah, Future Flash maybe a little flabbergasted of like, wow, I didn't see knockdowns like that coming in my rearview mirror. But Requiem is not here to play. He is here to win, and that he just did. So he is going to move on into the next stages of the tournament, whereas Future Flash, arguably one of the heavy favorites going out in the first time.
I can't believe it. I'm still a little bit a shock to the system, I think. Lost for words from what we've witnessed so far. We've had, Jagermeister out of the competition, Myeon, Future Flash now. It's just unheard of. It's unspeakable behavior from all these players. And the fact that the players were saying, need to make an impact. We need to see some key indicators to find out exactly how they could potentially progress later on in the series and throughout the bracket as well in the entirety of this tournament. And they have been performing better, much better than we expected and than what we anticipated in comparison.
Absolutely. We had that conversation earlier about we have so many dark horses for this tournament. I mean, it's anyone's game realistically, but with those victories now, I think the tournament now is pretty much only dark horses, maybe except for Elite Joe. So like, yeah, that's crazy. We've never seen any tournament play out like this before. So it's anyone's game, like we said, but great job by both these players.
Yeah, it's been a real, just unbelievable matchup we've seen in every single one of these quarterfinals. It's been upsets galore, and now we're going to find out exactly who's going to be taking it in the future matchups. But before we do that, we're going to head to a short break. And when we come back, we're going to head straight into the semi-finals and to crown ourselves a champion. So don't go anywhere, as we'll be back in just a few. And we're back at the Ferrari HP Esports Asphalt Series 2024 finals, and we've just finished off our fourth quarter-final of the day. Joining me is Future Flash. Now, sadly, not what to be expected. It's probably definitely an upset, sure the least. How did you feel like it went? Because in the last portion of that second track, you had a good lead, you maintained it really well, but what went wrong for you there?
Very easy to say. I think it's just it's because I don't play the game much, so I'm not as consistent anymore. When you get older and you work too much, you don't have time to play much the game because of work and everything else. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just lack of consistency and stress got to me. The Rome map that I lost, I should have never lost. I made a very small mistake actually, and I got knocked down just by being touched. I don't understand how this works, but in general, pretty good I did. It's just these very small mistakes that you don't make if you play the game more. So for me, because I have decreased a lot my time with the game, it's getting harder and harder to compete, and it will be obvious that one day this will come. I cannot keep winning every single tournament. I have now 10 championships. I finished the Asphalt book, the championship book. I will try to keep it on and push further, but as much as my time allows. I cannot do as much as I used to do anymore, so this is all I can give to the audience. And thanks everyone for the support over the years. Requiem did really well. He is very consistent. He plays the game a lot more than me. And of course, the Japanese DNA, as we know in all of the games, is different. And they are born literally for these games. And congratulations. I think the finals, from what I can think in my head, is going to be NATO and Requiem. Let's see who wins. It will be interesting.
Thank you very much indeed. We know you've got a repertoire of victories. This year alone has just been absolutely outstanding with what you've been able to occur over the course of time, all the way back from when I interviewed you back in 2019 when you won your first event in Milan, and now heading into here, still continuing those victories. Of course, you can't win it all. It's very difficult to really bring that in, those consistencies, because it's all about the time invested. And do you feel like you have to be able to make more time next year with that time investment to keep up with that consistency?
I think it's really hard. The more time passes, the less time I have for the game. The game is very interesting. I want to play, but when I return from work and I am exhausted, it's not the same anymore. It's really hard for me to keep up with everything. And yeah, I will try. 2025 is going to be a great year. Lots of esports over there. I will try my best. Besides that, there is a difference between the controls, like the tilt and the controller. So when tilting and playing with the controller is different. Obviously, as most people who follow me, they know that there is, let's say, a very big difference between the controller and tilt, between the inputs. And for me, I don't find it competing very fairly. Yet. I'm trying what I can do, but sometimes when you don't have the best weapon in your hands, you don't have always the luck to win. So you also need a bit of luck, but I'm waiting for the competition to be a bit more fair between the controls, because in most games, as we know, the controller has some kind of advantage over us. What us takes 2 buttons to do double tap, them it takes 1 button, and this slowly makes a little bit of a difference, but still is not like a major excuse for my loss. Besides that, really great. I don't know what else to say anymore. I will try my best, and I'm waiting for 2025. I think it's going to be a very interesting year to prove again to be on top of the leaderboards.
That's cool. Now, honestly, it's always a pleasure. You managed to qualify here at least anyway number. At least you've had an incredible year throughout the entirety of 2024. So congratulations, but commiserations for not being knocked out in the fourth quarter final. But we are now going to head off heading over to Marth now, as we'll be getting ready for the first semi-final as we get underway with these next matchups.
So much to break down there from Future Flash, as always giving some of the best interviews in esports. But when we talk about esports, we talk about the bigger picture. We talk about stories. We talk about eras. And with Future Flash, I guess the conversation is now, has his Asphalt era ended? I mean, we never thought it was possible, but things happen, times change, and Future Flash going out in the first opening match of a tournament is something I don't think we've ever actually seen in the history of Asphalt esports. So an era may have concluded. Now, as he mentioned, he's going to be back in 2025, and I have no doubt he's going to be back on the top of his game shortly here. But to wrap up the book for 2024, what an incredible matchup there, and what an incredible upset.
It certainly was indeed. And we know what Future Flash is like. He's got the pedigree of skill behind him. He's literally naturally born for Asphalt, and we definitely are going to see him back. I can assure you of that. But the numerous competitions he's already won this year in terms of his accolade is just unbelievable. And like I said, you can't win it all. The inconsistencies will, appear here and there in terms of those cracks if you don't have the time invested. And it happens to a lot of players. As you get older, you've got other things and other plans going on. That's where the inconsistencies will keep up. It's happened to all of us. I've seen it happen to numerous players over a number of esports titles, and that's one of the main parts of your criteria which can really default you into making those mishaps, getting the lower placements. It happens to the best of us. I always say it time and time again. But anyways, like I said before, even just qualifying here was just a feat in itself.
Absolutely. And, one of the most hard things in esports is once you get to the top, actually managing to stay on the top. But we'll take a look at the bracket in a second to see how all of this has managed to transpire, because what an interesting tournament we've had so far. So many upsets, so many dark horse victories, and now you can take a look at this bracket and see we got two semifinals coming up, Nato versus the Big 71, and then followed by Elite Joe versus Requiem. I mean, out of those four players, you honestly have to say Elite Joe's probably the favorite, but we've talked about jet lag, we've talked about all the variants we've seen so far, but a 2-0 victory might get his adrenaline flowing here. But taking a look at the Nato versus Big 71 matchup, that's going to be an interesting one. Big 71 obviously having that experience with the Asphalt series in 2023, but this time around it's been a year, whereas Nato is now that fresh face on this tournament competition. So, oh man, it's honestly anyone's game.
Yeah, I really, don't get me wrong, Elite Joe, we know that he's, in terms of his reputation, got the biggest reputation out of all four of them combined, but it's not about that anymore. We've seen, like what Future Flash said, it's the Japanese DNA, and it seems like these two players have really come here to play, which has been incredible to say the least. Well, we are going to now kick things off with our first semi-final. Let's have a look at the players to see who will be competing here for a spot in the grand final. It will be the Big 71 versus Nato, and I must say these two players are really well drilled and refined, and we clearly witnessed this in the first quarterfinals.
Absolutely, and you would describe both these players' play styles as just clean and precise. The Big 71, we talked many times earlier about how many little details that this guy knows how to play with Asphalt. He knows every single track like the back of his hand. He knows every single corner to cut, and like he said earlier, he knows the probabilities of every single jump, every single different corner that he can take, whereas Nato is just so feared in those leaderboards because of how fast he can be.
Surely can. Let's have a look at the player info and to get a little bit more information on these players to see exactly how they come about. And like we said before, it's only Big 71's only 17. That's absolute madness. This young gun and now becoming a juggernaut in the scene. We'll have to see exactly how he's going to perform against Nato.
Yeah, and taking a look at the information there as well, only 18, so it's like these players aren't really separated by age. That's a conversation we have a lot of times in esports when you have the veterans versus the newcomers. This time around, you do have that veteran experience with the Big 71, but this time the age gap isn't really a factor, so it really is all about who's going to take the wheel in these races here upcoming with the 499P Modificata, one of the coolest cars ever based on the Le Mans winning 499P. But both these players, it's just an interesting conversation of will that newcomer upset experience sort of be a factor with the Big 71 in terms of having that Asphalt Series 2023 experience? So I don't know. It's honestly one of the most 50-50 matches we've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, it really is. It's going to be a tough nut to crack here between these two players. With Big 71 and Nato, with how on earth they were performing earlier, and they've already caused a massive upset. The pressure's now not on their shoulders anymore. They're probably pretty happy with achieving a guaranteed spot in the semi-finals and the top four, as we'll be checking out the tracks very shortly to see exactly what these two players are going to be competing competing on. We'll be starting off with Greenland on Airport Escape, as we normally get Fire and Ice, as you already know. Then we're going over to Osaka Refined Finish. And finally, and one of my personal favorites, the San Francisco City by the Bay.
City by the Bay is a fun one. I hope we do get to see it. But starting out with Greenland and Osaka, two extremes in terms of Greenland being a very top-speed focused track and Osaka being just all about those corners, all about those 90-degree corners, all about wall riding, taking advantage of the incredible handling for the 499P. But again, with Greenland talking about that acceleration, oh man, it's just insane how fast you can get up to the top speed with the nitro in that car.
And you can see that Ferrari official merchandise there, exclusive for the players, depending on who is actually going to be able to come out on top. And I'm sure a lot of these players will be gunning for that more than anything else here. But for the Big 71, he's already shown incredible improvements over the course of time, with refinements is next to none. And we can see so far that against Nato, we know that his straight lines, his nitro management and everything, they've both, you can clearly tell they have the full package and ready to absolutely go at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that I will say is usually, you know, I'm not really jealous of the players because I don't need to get that pressure of being on stage in front of an audience competing. But with those prizes back there, maybe I should get a little jealous. I mean, I want to get those prizes. They look awesome. But as we go on to Greenland here, Nato and Big 71 literally on top of each other, in identical routes, identical 360s. Nato bumping into himself, and it looks like Big 71 taking an early lead there, manages to get those double barrel rolls. But actually, what a great job by Big 71, taking advantage of the air thrust there. One of the tricks of Greenland is actually those air vents that actually push your car up into the air. The more 360s you do, the higher your car will go. And so great job by both these players to not go to that bottom route, which is considered the slower route, but with Nato doing a great job, both of them actually doing shockwave. And again, we see those thrusters up there trying to get those cars into the air because of that 30% top speed increase. With that air time, you do get 30% increase in top speed. So if you're a player, you want to do everything you can to stay in the air, whether it's rail grinding or bumping up into the air like you see these players right there. So great job, but Big 71's just doing just incredible times here, shattering the lap record, I would say, and Nato just trailing behind ever so slightly.
And he has done indeed with Nato now, still directly behind him, only by half a second here. He's trying to do what he can with the shockwaves over that last previous jump. And the shockwave, oh no, he's going to wreck himself trying to do that forward barrel roll, but it's just not going to work out in his favour. But again, I respect the risk, I respect that jump as well and the decision, because it was the only way he was going to be able to claw back and try and breach that gap.
Yeah, Nato had to go for some insane move, and unfortunately the forced barrel roll into the airport strip just didn't quite work out. We're going to see him use some really nice timing on the 360, not actually needing that extra 360 like last time around. That'll get him a couple extra milliseconds here on top of Big 71, but unfortunately, I'm not sure if it's going to be enough. You can see that Big 71 is well far behind out of the volcano itself, whereas Nato is just exiting it right now. So yeah, Big 71's got to have a big smile on his face, especially for this first track here. He has nothing to fear right at the moment, and it's going to be a pretty easy victory here for the Big 71 on Greenland.
Certainly will be indeed, as Nato is just trying to close the gap, but it's going to be way too far off at this point. This Big 71 can play it as safe as can be here to now seal that first track victory in his name. And just a little bit unfortunate. It was a very shaky start from both players as well, considering the amount of shenanigans which is actually occurring during that time frame.
Yeah, you saw there was a little bit of trouble from Nato, you know, about how to deal with that second player on the track. And no, Big 71 actually wrecks. This gives an opportunity for Nato to catch up, and it looks like he actually might. Going right on top of Big 71. This is an incredible comeback. Big 71 might have put the victory in the palm of his hands, but oh no! Once again, Big 71 making it a huge mistake. Nato's going to take advantage of that and probably come in first place here as he crosses the finish line in this first track. We were, you know, managing to wrap up. We were, you know, talking a little slowly, and then all of a sudden, look at the surprise on Nato's face. He wasn't expecting to pull out this victory, but even I'm surprised. I'm fumbling over my words. That was an incredible change of events there.
There was literally, what, 15% of the track left? We just made the assumption straight away, but these things can happen. We've seen it time and time again, but they're rare occurrences, but we've seen them numerous times in the past, and it looks like Nato's going to, well, some breathing room now, as he's probably assuming that he's going to have that reverse sweep in his hands and then go forward in tracks 2 and 3 and make that attempt. But Big 71, he had that in the bag. It was just a matter of time, really. 10 to 15 seconds, he would have secured it and go into with a nice lead into track number 2. But he's realised a mistake. We saw him do it in the first quarterfinal as well, where, you know, he had a very shaky first track and he came out absolutely roaring in the second and third. So we'll see if we can make a difference and do that here. and try and make a repeat of what we witnessed in that first quarter-final here. But Nato must have just been thinking, what on earth's going on? I shouldn't be in the lead here. One more and I'll be able to secure my spot in the grand finals, which we're going to continue now into track number 2. If you're just joining us, this is the first semi-final here between the Big 71 and Nato. And Nato was able to get the first track victory. We're going to see if the Big 71 can create that reverse sweep.
Ooh, Big 71 trying to shove Nato out of his way, trying to make sure he doesn't have to take that into consideration again, but Nato doing a great job using that shockwave acceleration to get right ahead of Big 71, get him out of his rearview mirror. And oh my gosh, that was a close call there for both those players in that first section. But Big 71 with a little bit of a behind start there. So I'm curious to see if he's going to pull out any crazy stunts, any rail grinds or anything like that. Because we know he's been cooking behind the scenes in the kitchen. He knows every little trick, every little air time that he can pull out to try and get that top speed advantage. But Nato doing a great job of making sure not to go too ambitious, not doing anything crazy to not wreck, as you saw earlier with the Big 71. But we did see with that earlier series that you brought up earlier, Big 71 managed to recover that, and oh no, smacking into the pole. That's going to give Nato a huge lead now as he barrels onto the second lap, and again, another wreck.
Oh, Nato may have sealed the deal here with Big 71, just with the self-infliction once again, and now it's going to cost him not only this series, but Nato's actually also wrecked. So for Big 71, it's going to give him a little bit of time now to really recuperate his losses from his mental standpoint and be able to try and claw back if he can. But the question is, how far behind is he? I think I just witnessed down the track, he's still about 2 or 3 seconds behind. That second wreckage may have actually cost him this game here.
Yeah, it seems like Big 71, just because of that second wreck, if it was only the first wreck, he probably would have had a very big opportunity to catch up and sort of snatch that lead from Nato. But unfortunately, it was those double wrecks in that first lap that sealed the deal. So Nato still quite a few ways ahead of Big 71. I would say almost like a second or so. But Nato doing a great job, not going for anything super ambitious anymore, realizing like, okay, I got to pull back the curtain a little bit, got to slow down quite a bit and just make sure that I get this victory in the bag, make sure it's very concise and clean. But unfortunately for Big 71, it just didn't quite work out. Trying to go for very ambitious plays, which I absolutely respect. You can see actually pulling it off right there, but again, unfortunately wrecking onto the pole, and it's just unfortunate, maybe bad luck for Big 71 this time around, but great job to Nato for winning this match.
Yeah, commiserations to the Big 71. He performed extremely well all tournament long, but sadly, those self-inflicted wrecks cost him both of those tracks. And it does mean that Nato will be your first player going into the grand finals. The question is, who's it going to be up against? That's going to be another question in itself as we check out the next semi-final later on. But my goodness, that was his in the bag, no excuses, and sadly was able to fall at the very last hurdle on that first track.
Yeah, my brain has turned into a mishmash of spaghetti because with that first track or that first race, especially that lead that was taken back by Nato at the very last second, oh my gosh, I mean, we were all, slowing down. We were like, okay, Big 71's got this in the bag, no problem. And then all of a sudden, wrecks, and then Nato slingshots into the victory like we've never seen before. And it seems to be that maybe have gotten Big 71 a little bit nervous.
May have done, yeah, and it just makes you wonder, like, if that second wreckage didn't occur, what could have, entirely happened. But we know what most players feel when they see that first wreckage. They just assume it's done. That's it. There's very, very little we could do now to try and close that gap and then try and make something of ourselves to try and overtake. You have to rely on putting the pressure onto your opponent to then to be able to overtake. But even then, it's an unlikely story, isn't it? But the fact that he did actually have this opportunity, but sadly wrecked himself a second time, there was no way for him to come back in that one.
Yeah, we saw with that second track now that Nato understood that he had the opportunity to get that clean sweep 2-0. He had the fire inside him. He had that ability to get the lead so early on. So just a great job by Nato to take advantage of that situation. Unfortunately for the Big 71, it was those couple of wrecks as well in that second track that just did it in the bin for him.
He certainly did indeed in the bin. He actually went, and we will check out the replays and the highlights to see exactly what occurred, because there was a huge amount to talk about. There was those 6 or 7 wrecks we saw during those first 2 tracks, and even the very beginning of that first track on Greenland was just unbelievable.
Yeah, there you can see on Greenland, Nato actually doing that early wreck there, and maybe was thinking that he was out of the tournament entirely there. But with Big 71, you can see here repeating sort of the similar barrel roll mistake, and unfortunately that cost him the game this time around. Nato doing a great job of taking advantage of that acceleration for the 499P and making sure he secures the lead. So great job by the Big 71 to try and get back that lead right there, as you can see, but being a little bit ambitious and smacking headfirst into the airport section there. But Nato here, this is Osaka, the second track here, where he managed to get that 2-0. You can see both these these players trying to fight for that early lead. If you get that early lead, you get a great job into maybe securing that final position, but Nato doing a great job using Shockwave in the air, trying to get up to the top speed, and for Nato, just absolutely amazing stuff right there. So yeah, great job for that tournament, and we'll be over to Lethal in a second here for the interview.
Thank you very much indeed for that analysis there, Marv. And I am joined by Big 71. Sadly, we're not able to make it into the finals, but that first track, it was yours in the bag, sadly. But what happened during that last portion of the first track?
What happened is that I tried to go as usual for like barrel, and I saw that it wasn't gonna finish well, like the car didn't have the right angle, so I tried to stop it, but it was already too late. So I had to respawn. When I respawned, I saved for Shockwave to try to at least have the advantage over Nato in the end. And I tried to do the trick where you force barrel and then into the little ramp, but sadly it didn't work out as my car dipped instead of going up and killed me into the small airport. And then for Zaka, first off, I got a lot of pressure from the first few jumps where Nato pushed me back and forth. And right after, when I tried to do my floaty to just take the corner, sadly the car didn't catch it, and I had to do another one, and then it all well down here from here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Yeah, we witnessed it straight away in that first track. It was just very unfortunate towards the very end. And then the second track, what do you feel like led to your demise? Because, again, you had a very strong showing to begin with, and then it just all went a little bit all over the place. So if you could tell me a little bit about how that first wreckage occurred on that second track.
Yeah, what I did is that like I tried to take back the lead because I saw I was far behind, so I tried risky tricks which didn't work out, sadly. And then I just tried messing around just to try and see if I could make anything good, but turns out it wasn't really my track on this one. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand. I always respect the decisions made to try and claw back, because we know how difficult it is with that 2 or 3 second being behind us after that first record. So we all perfectly understand why you took those risks. But, congratulations to you, but at least you made it into the top 4. We'll be seeing you later on in the 3rd and 4th place matchup. But for now, though, we're going to throw it back to Marv as we get ourselves ready for the second semi-final.
Awesome insight once again from the Big 71. And something I do want to touch on again is something that he said was he was trying to use the strategy of saving up her Shockwave after that first initial wreck to try and catch up, maybe have the opportunity to not lose that lead. But I was actually talking to Elite Joe earlier, and he was actually mentioning that sometimes for the 499P, it's actually better to use double tap nitro to accelerate to your top speed, because the acceleration is just so darn good with this car. You might not need Shockwave in certain situations. So maybe if the Big 71 used a different strategy to maybe try and make sure that Nato didn't take the lead, we could have seen a very different story. As we saw, I got a little bit flustered trying to do that forced barrel roll, and unfortunately just smacked into some concrete.
It is for the second track. If only that second wreckage didn't come, then we could be seeing an entirely different story. We could be going to a 3rd track right now, but it's not too much of a worry for now. Sadly, he's out from the semi-final, but we will be seeing him in the 3rd, 4th place match later on. But for now, though, we do have our second semi-final to really confirm exactly who's going to be making it into the grand final against Nato, and he's been looking like a fortune to be reckoned with. Honestly, he's been looking so good, super well refined, and really have that consistency which all players always require in order to stay afoot here on the asphalt circuit. But now we're going to find out exactly who's going to be meeting him in our second semi-final shortly, as we'll find out with the players and to see exactly what is going to be occurring shortly. But it's actually quite unbelievable from what we've seen in that first semi-final.
Yeah, this is going to be a very interesting tournament, but something we do want to check out is some quick videos about some really cool headsets. I love these HyperX headsets.
And if you're just joining us, we're getting ready for our second semi-final. We've already had all the quarterfinals all done and dusted. The first semi-final went to NATO, and we'll be seeing the big 71 later on in the third place playoff. And it has really been crazy. It really has been crazy asphalt so far for the entirety of the day, and we didn't expect this many upsets. But now we're going to be finding out if the North American dream is still alive with Elite Joe versus the other Japanese player on the other end of the stick. It's going to be Requiem.
Come on, NA, baby, let's take it home. That's going to be so awesome to witness. But something that's been really cool to see is those Japanese players making their first time appearance, with Nato making it all the way to the grand finals. That is just so cool to see. So maybe that could be the same case for Requiem.
Yeah, it certainly could do indeed, and it's going to be very difficult to imagine that. We could see in a Japan showdown really going into the grand finals, depending on how Requiem is going to perform this time. But the only problem is it's got a very tough nut to crack here in this second match.
Yeah, Elite Joe is just one of the absolute juggernauts here in Asphalt. Just recently won a tournament for the North American region, but at the age of 25 is a bit older than some of the other players, but I don't think that's going to matter at all. No. But the favorite Ferrari being the Ferrari F8 Tributo, one of my favorites as well. It just looks so sleek and awesome. But also we'll take a look at Requiem here in a second too. H20 coming from Japan, same thing as Nato as well. But again, I also mentioned the Ferrari Testarossa earlier today, one of my classic favorites. Just a classic choice for one of the most iconic Ferraris of all time.
It's quite interesting because a lot of people, especially viewers at home, would realise the bracket and all the favourites, the huge potential favourites, have been knocked out. And they would assume, surely this is Elite Joe's to win now. Like, you know, there's no way he can lose this. But from what we witnessed so far from these Japanese players and how Big 71 was performing earlier on, it was just absolutely crazy. But it's been phenomenal to watch, been an absolute pleasure. But let's have a look at the tracks these players are going to be into in this second semi-final, as we'll be kicking things off with New York, the city that never sleeps, heading over to Tuscany for Timeless Pathway, and then finally it will be Paris for Metropolitan. So your thoughts on these tracks going into the second semi-final?
Now this is going to be a nice matchup of tracks here, especially with playstyles. New York has a really good balance of top speed focused areas with those twisty 90-degree corners that we've seen earlier today as well. But with Tuscany, that's a track we've seen a lot of players have a little bit of an issue with, one of the newer tracks in Asphalt Legends Unite. So I'm curious to see which of these two players has actually studied it, maybe done their homework a little better than the other player, because maybe that could be a deciding factor in this matchup.
Yeah, that's where the time investment definitely come into fruition, especially for these newer tracks as well. And you can really see the night and day difference with how these players have actually put in terms of the consistency showing on these tracks and who haven't. To see what Elite Joe can do. We were talking about the jet lag earlier, a little bit tired, but I think that's worn off a little bit. You can go to sleep later. It's perfectly fine. So now we're going to head into the first track here in the second semi-final here between Requiem and Elite Joe. And remember, guys, I hope this is a best of three. And Elite Joe already been taken down, and it looks like it's going to be a complete crazy feat in itself.
Wow, Requiem getting a taste of his own medicine as Elite Joe knocks him down very early on here into the first track. And when I said the city never sleeps, I thought it was a little ironic because I don't know how much sleep Elite Joe got, but it doesn't matter. He doesn't care about sleep. Sleep is for the weak, and Elite Joe is getting rid of the weak ones here in this first track. With that immediate knockdown, he made secure this track just so early on. That was so crazy to see. I don't even know where the conversation goes from there. He's done and dusted. He's got the wreck. He's out of here now, and it's just nothing but the finish line for Elite Joe unless Requiem has anything to say about it.
We'll see if he does have anything to say about it here with Requiem now after that wreckage earlier on by Elite Joe. We'll have to see what he can do to try and bridge the gap. But let's be honest here, on a track like this, it's going to be very difficult for him. And Elite Joe isn't going to make the same mistake as what the other players have done in the past in this tournament and cause a bit of a kerfuffle there by playing it a little bit unsafe here. But we'll find out shortly here. Requiem has closed the gap a little bit, but not going to be enough yet to actually be able to take track number one.
Yeah, you saw Requiem there trying to go for that lower division of that section there, trying to get a little less airspeed to try and take advantage of the acceleration, maybe for the 499P, but Elite Joe just maintaining the route, the standard route that we usually see. A lot of these players know the exact route that it's at least optimal for their car and for their position. But again, one of those things you have to consider is that there's another car on the track. So sometimes you'll see these players take different routes depending on their position, but this time around, Elite Joe knows the standard route, and it looks like Requiem is trying to get that airtime. Oh, just barely clipping the corner there in Grand Central Station, doing a great job. But unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be enough because Elite Joe knows how to play very safely once he gets into the lead.
Yeah, he's still at least 2 or 3 seconds ahead, and see now we're crossing the finish line very shortly, but rode the ball in his favour rather than being knocked down. We don't want to see what happened earlier to him compared to Big 71, but it looks like Elite Joe will be taking that first track quite comfortably after the initial wreckage. And it's only one more track remaining for Elite Joe to book his place in the grand finals.
Great job by Elite Joe taking home that first track, where you can see maybe not the most happy. Maybe he's thinking to himself he's got some room to sort of improve there in that second. And look, honestly, with both of these players, I don't know if there was any more you could do with especially Requiem trying to come back in that second lap. I mean, it was just trying to get every single little airtime as possible, every single opportunity he can. But for Elite Joe, just had that huge victory in that first lap there. So it's like, well, he can just sort of sit back, relax. But maybe he got a little bit sleepy, just like sitting there thinking to himself, okay, you know, I can just bring this one home. It's all good, whatever. But for the second time around, though, Requiem, I mean, he could do what happened earlier this time around, where he got that 2-0 back-to-back in terms of that reverse sweep. So maybe Requiem is thinking that he has to get that knockdown early on like he did against Future Flash.
Doesn't he have the pedigree or skill to do that? It's just a matter of what he can bring here in this second track, and if he's able to do so. As Elite Joe has been performing highly consistently across the board of this tournament. But Requiem, though, it's like you said, it's that reverse sweep required in order to bring it back and book that place into the grand finals.
And one of those big conversation points we had earlier, and especially with Future Flash, was that controller versus tilt. And here you can see these exact same competition shaking down. And it looks like Elite Joe, excuse me here.
And he's going into it now with that shockwave of Requiem now already looking very solid, and with that nice early lead by at least a second to a second and a half. It is absolutely crazy in itself, with Elite Joe slowing down massively going forward.
Yeah, there we go. Elite Joe doing a great job of maintaining that first early position there, but Requiem's trying to do everything he can, actually taking that early lead as well, doing a great job using Shockwave to sort of hop yourself over onto the wall and get that air time, and it looks like Elite Joe's trying to catch up, but honestly, Requiem has so much more Shockwave in that tank, that's going to get him up to the top speed so quicker.
Certainly will do indeed, and Elite Joe just trying to do his best now to continue to close that gap, and he really has done as well, but Requiem is on an absolute tear here on this second track. He's definitely want to try and pave that way, and now going into the second lap now with Elite Joe only about a second after 2 seconds behind. He has closed the gap ever so slightly. Elite Joe now to use that brake nitro trick to get around this next corner, and consistently with that perfect nitro here, and will be shockwaving very shortly around this next bend. But as he's doing so, he's doing pretty well so far. Still hoping for a wreckage, or at least apply some pressure onto Requiem, but so far Requiem just doing a great job just maintaining this lead and not really giving Elite Joe an ounce of room in order to catch up.
But it looks like Elite Joe trying to bounce back and forth onto the wall, doing a great job of not wrecking. That was a good recovery there, but man, Tuscany is just such a tough nut to crack. I don't know if he can actually manage to catch up, because Requiem has such a very, very commanding lead here as we close out this first race here on Tuscany. What a great job by Requiem.
It certainly has done indeed. That was a very clean race coming out from Requiem, and that was an unbelievable way to bring this back. And now he's going to be feeling a little bit more relieved and less pressure on his shoulders now. But he's only got one more track for both these players in order to really get that spot into the grand finals against Nato. And honestly, it's too close to call here. Both these players have been so well drilled and refined throughout the entirety of this event. It's going to be a very difficult task for us to try and predict exactly the outcome of how things are going to go in track number 3.
Yeah, there we go. We got the 1-1 sort of tie up, and man, you love to be in this position, because now this last track is what really matters the most. This is going to decide who our second grand finalist is.
Certainly will do indeed, and honestly, it's still too close to call between the two. We know for Requiem, he got wrecked in that first track. Elite Joe had a bit of a fumble in the second, but let's see how clean this is going to be in comparison to the previous 2 tracks. As both of them are neck and neck at the moment. Requiem will have back the early lead, and Joe directly hot on his tails to try and make that overtake happen here, with both of them using that brake nitro trick to try and get around this next bend. Both of them going now into the perfect nitro, and let's see what Joe's going to do differently in comparison to try and overtake Requiem.
Yeah, we saw that both players actually managed to slip the bit in between the traffic. That was a great job, because a lot of the time you'll smack right into the front of the sedan, and that's just not good for your Ferrari. But here this time around, looks like both those players did a great job of making sure to thread the needle perfectly. Elite Joe's going to go for that yellow nitro. That's going to cut into the inside line, but Requiem doing a great job trying to get that outside line and actually lining himself up for success here onto this barrel roll. Both these players are going to try and take it by drifting into it, and then there we go, propelling themselves onto the ramp into the second lap here. But Requiem just maintaining a really good presence at top speed. And ooh, there we go, perfect line there into the car, not managing to wreck absolutely whatsoever. So both these players are super duper precise, and it looks like Elite Joe's ever so slightly crept up. There is potential for him to do an overtake, and as you can see, oh no, tried to do the rail grind, and that's not going to work out for Elite Joe. Unfortunately, that gives Requiem an incredible advantage.
That rail grind may have cost Elite Joe the opportunity to make it to the grand finals, but Requiem has been so consistent, playing unsafe for the majority of this track and showing no end in sight here. They've only got 20% left of the track remaining. Elite Joe extremely far behind there. We're talking at least 3 or 4 seconds, considering the position he was in earlier. And for Requiem, we could be seeing a complete Japan standoff here in the grand finals. Future Flash said that earlier, it's in their DNA, and I think he has proved us right here as Requiem will cross the finish line. He'll be your winner of the second semi-final, and he'll be facing off against Nato in the grand finals later on. But commiserations to Elite Joe, incredible performance from him, but we'll be seeing him again later on in the third place playoff.
Oh man, no doubt in my mind that both these players cementing themselves into the grand final is going to write some more in the story for the history books of Asphalt Legends Unite. I was not expecting the two players who have never made a live finals before actually make it both to the grand finals. We've had underdogs before make it, pretty far up, like Jagermeister, I think about earlier with the North American tournament, but we saw that Elite Joe managed to smack him out of the park there with that one. Just like, I've been into 20 million grand finals before, I can take this. But this time around, we have both of the new players into the grand finals. That is incredible.
Well, I said they were going to look to make an impact, but for both of them to make it to the grand finals is just unreal. And congratulations to the both of them, considering the lack of experience they have in an offline environment, and to come in here and to take it against the, the top players in the world and still manage to come out on top here. It's just a formidable feat in itself. Phenomenal work from these players. But we do have a few highlights for you guys to witness, to see exactly how things occurred during that series.
Yeah, I want to take a look out here and in terms of how this all went down, because like we mentioned just a bajillion times already, we got that first knockdown there coming out from Requiem, and unfortunately for Elite Joe, that just didn't quite work out in terms of how it shook down into those last couple of tracks. That first knockdown from Elite Joe, I honestly thought that would secure him the whole series in and of itself, because you got that self brimming with confidence, but that's just not how the cookie crumbled for Elite Joe. Tried to go for that rail grind in the second lap there, and unfortunately that just didn't quite work out.
No, it certainly did not. It wasn't even self-inflicted either. Normally say sometimes you are your worst enemy, especially on asphalt, but not this time around. As Elite Joe, really, I do again respect the decision he made to make that wall ride, or the rail ride rather, and still wasn't able to do much because he knew how good Requiem was with his lines and refinements across the board on that track, and still wasn't able to creep up. So sometimes you do need to make these errors, or potential errors, or these mistakes can happen when you're trying to at least breach that gap, but it just wasn't to be. But we will be seeing him actually next, coming up in the third place matchup between the likes of Big 71 and Elite Joe.
Yeah, there we go. We're going to get that third place decider going for you quickly here, but the Big 71 versus Elite Joe was not something that I thought for this third place decider. I thought one of two, or both these players definitely had the potential to make it to that grand finals. The Big 71 just with an absolute precision-making, driving level experience, but Elite Joe having that tenured esports career with so many victories under his belt. I thought both these players had the potential, but now we're going to see them battle it out for third place. Maybe they're a little bit angry inside. Maybe they think they deserve to be there in that grand final, so maybe they're going to be at the top of their A game for this third place decider.
It's basically between a huge amount of knowledge versus veteran experience, isn't it, between the two? And for Big 71, I can understand from his perspective on how he reacts in a lot of his games. He does get a lot of frustration in himself. He knows that it's mistakes he would never, ever normally make night and day difference compared to what he's normally witnessing back in the time trials. But I'm sure we're going to see a lot more for him coming into this series against Elite Joe to try and get that third place. But let's check out the players now to see exactly how things are going to go. And we're going to check out the tracks now to see exactly what they'll be competing on. The Shanghai Pudong Rise, then next one will be Nevada in the desert, and then Buenos Aires once again for football and politics. I like that.
We always know that Buenos Aires is a shakedown showdown, and hopefully we'll get to see that third track, because I'm going to be curious to see how those players bump into each other and react to each other on the track there in those twisty streets of Buenos Aires. But this is going to be a really great matchup here between these two players. We have a great range of tracks for you guys here today. So with this third place decider, man, I don't know. This is going to close out yet another conversation we've had all throughout the conversation of cross-platform support and everything like that, especially with both these players coming from different platforms, but also vastly different regions. We talked about Elite Joe just being the absolute king of North America for forever, realistically speaking, whereas the Big 71 making that great appearance in the 2023 Asphalt Series, but placing third place. It would be funny if he came third place again.
Yeah, imagine that. Imagine that. And I think anyone, before we even saw how the Big 71 performed, normally you would go, okay, Elite Joe should take this, surely. But from what we've witnessed so far from Big 71's performance, he has been monumental in the competitive space of Asphalt. And the fact that his refinements were just ridiculously good, and this is what's going to be the make and break difference if they both perform a clean race going at it. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Elite Joe is now going to perform to try and secure that third place spot, because it's still very important to manage to get a podium finish, considering all the millions of players who have to try and get through in order to get here as the final 8 spots, and to manage to get top 3, not too shabby at all.
Oh yeah, top 3 is no small feat whatsoever. And definitely speaking for both these players, as you could see them preparing, something I wanted to talk about was, as soon as you interviewed Big 71 a couple minutes ago, he immediately identified the mistakes. He immediately showcased all of his knowledge by saying, oh, I should have taken this barrel roll differently, I should have taken this route differently. So honestly, I'm expecting some big improvements from the Big 71.
Yeah, certainly. I think maturity plays a huge part, and then owning up to your mistakes is even bigger. And that's what I like about this player as well. He's got no excuses. He knows exactly what needs to be done, but what needs to be done now is for us to get into this third place playoff. And it's going to be between Big 71 and Elite Joe, already getting into that crash car. So Elite Joe is going to be a little bit behind in terms of mileage, but use that shockwave to attempt to make that overtake. But Big 71 able to keep hold of his lead.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, you saw that there was a bit of a shove there into the crashed traffic car there, and that actually made quite a big difference, something I wasn't quite expecting in this first track. But this is going to be interesting to see if they both take the inside corner. They will. Sometimes you see players go for that jump instead to get to that top speed, but for these cars, there's just insane handling and acceleration. You don't need any of that airtime right there. All you need is a quick corner and some quick acceleration. It looks like Elite Joe's going to offer that perfect nitro there to go through that corner, and ooh, unfortunately, just barely touching that wall is not going to get him that barrel roll he so desired. That's going to let the Big 71 use shockwave and thus accelerate pretty quickly. Now, it looks like Elite Joe is just hot on his heels, though, so it's not like Elite Joe has anything huge to be afraid of.
Seems to be like that indeed. Use that double nitro for the durability to get over that last jump, and now getting around the corner and still able to keep hold of his lead. It's only by half a second, though. Elite Joe is right on his backside at the moment with that previous shockwave. We can see what Joe can do now to try and make the potential overtake, but it's looking very difficult at the moment. Big 71's refinements on his straight lines and the nitro management across the board with the tricks in hand, he's just being able to maintain it with not really too much pressure here. He's just treating it like it's a time trial.
Yeah, Big 71, again, we talked about adapting to mistakes earlier before. He's not going for anything risky. There have been no crazy maneuvers or any big airtime tricks that we've seen like he tried to use earlier in the tournament. But this time around, he was just clean, precise, clinical racing, know how to taking all of these corners extremely well. And so as a result, he does have this lead all throughout the entirety of this track.
Does indeed, but Elite Joe has clawed his way by about a tenth or two of the second, but will Big 71 be able to continue that? He should be able to. We haven't really got too much time left for him on the clock, so nearly, literally it is go time for Elite Joe. But as you can know, across the finish line, that is going to be it. And as you can see, the Big 71 is going to be able to keep a hold of that lead by a second, and now it's just one more track left remaining for him to secure a spot on the podium.
There we go, Big 71 going for that third place position, trying to repeat the same position as he had in the Asphalt Series for 2023 as well. But for Elite Joe, the pressure is all on him. Big 71 can get this 2-0 pretty easily, I would say, depending on how he plays, because now he's learned from the mistakes of not trying to go for those super crazy, risky maneuvers. If he plays clean, if he plays concisely, now we know, and now he knows that he could just win the race outright through skill alone. So it's up to Elite Joe to crawl back and maybe take down the Big 71. Maybe he has to go for a knockdown, or Elite Joe has to go for those risky maneuvers himself. We've seen that he can pull off some crazy maneuvers, especially in that North American talent. But honestly, you know, we talk about esports as well in general. North American can sometimes be a little bit of a cracked egg when it comes to esports.
Here we go. Yeah.
Gotta go back and forth with North America.
Give me the North American excuses. Go on, continue.
Oh, it is. It's all excuses. It's all excuses. I mean, would you say that North America, you know, considering Elite Joe just has basically like the pedigree that Future Flash has, it's like, is he really, you know, battling against the highest tier of opponents? I would say like Pickle, for example, is one of those players who can really give Elite Joe for the run of his money. But the entirety of the rest of North America. I mean, we've seen crazy upsets like Jagermeister, but unfortunately losing out to Elite Joe himself in that grand finals. So is it the fact that maybe Elite Joe doesn't have the best competition to practice against?
Yeah, it's a big question to ask, really, because I've seen it in other esports as well, where certain regions don't have as good practice because the caliber of skill in the players in that region is as good as he would like to be. And do you want to deal with that high ping, the high latency? Well, sadly, you do have to. Or the only other thing you can say is that some teams or some players out there will go to that region a couple of weeks in advance to prepare, which I think is normally the right decision to do. If you've conquered your own region, that's when you need to think about deciding how you want to practice leading up to that event as well. But we both can't talk anyway because both our regions are done anyway. Both our regions are in the grand finals anyway, but they are in the third place playoff. As we can see, Big Sentinel able to get the inside lane and now going to try and get across, but it looks like it doesn't actually need to body block as Elite Joe is about a 10th or 2 seconds behind. Let's give Big 71 a little bit of room here to breathe, and now going to be heading across to Big 71 with a great break. Not too tricky as he's going across that straight line, and fantastic way to kick things off here for Big 71.
Ooh, great job to avoid crashing into the concrete like we've seen earlier. Great job by Big 71 to pull off that forced barrel roll, and that's going to let him get some more top speed here as we cross into the desert section here, bumping into the traffic. That's actually going to allow, actually not going to allow Elite Joe to get that near miss, whereas the Big 71 gets advantage of that extra nitro efficiency. So as you can see, oh no, Big 71 trying to do a rail grind, but it's just going to wreck. The physics not working out quite well for Big 71, and Elite Joe, despite what happened earlier on in the track, is going to have a massive lead.
That was literally the tiniest particle on the map geometry on that row, which is going to cost him. It's going to be a little bit of a pain in the backside for him to try and claw his way back, but Big 71 is definitely going to give it a damn good try. Still a couple of seconds away, but remember, this track is quite long, so he may have the opportunity, but the only problem is you don't really see too many jumps or too many parts of the track.
Here we
and there
go.
it gives him that,
Oh,
but he's actually
no.
going to take the risk, but Big 71, it doesn't pay it off. But again, respect the decision.
Yeah, that was probably one of the most, I'd say, risky and maybe most
Ambitious?
moves, yeah, exactly, that we've seen so far. And look, if it worked out, I mean, we've seen crazy moves. Like last year in one of the tournaments, one player actually managed to hop like half of the track in Cairo. That was incredible, and I'd never seen anyone pull it off in a live environment. And it looks like Big 71 was trying to channel that sort of energy, and oh no, once again, face first into the concrete barrier, and that is going to secure Elite Joe in terms of this track victory.
Yeah, he secured it earlier with the second rank, but the third one has basically lost it 100%. Pretty much mathematically impossible unless Elite Joe does something self-inflicted, so stupid in such a way that it will cost himself at least 10 seconds. But we know that's not going to happen because he's almost finished up here with Big 71 very far behind, and it's going to be one apiece between these two players to find out who's going to take that third place spot in track number 3.
There we go. The series is all tied up. Third place position is going to come down to one track with Elite Joe versus the Big 71. I was not expecting that to happen, honestly. With the Big 71, I thought, you know, he was not going to go for those crazy risky maneuvers. And look, I understand you got to go for the biscuit if you want to risk it for everything. But this time around, I thought maybe just trying to secure that third place victory, trying to play precise, trying to play clinical, and just get that victory out of your way, sweep Elite Joe under the rug. But man, maybe getting a bit maybe nervous in terms of really trying hard to get that third place position. You can see he's really thinking about it, deep in thought in terms of how he wants to approach this final track.
I think a lot of us, me especially, I've wrecked myself on that exact part of the track numerous times. And when you sit there and think to yourself, it's huge. What are you doing trying to refine it that much? But it's in our blood, isn't it? It's the competitive side of Asphalt. But yeah, it's he had about, what was it, about half a second lead at the time, and he was in good spirits at the time. He seemed to be looking pretty good in terms of how he was going to perform for the rest of the track and the consistency there. But it's always been self-inflicted for him, which is why I feel it's so unfortunate. But that one there especially was very unfortunate. Like literally the smallest pixel there was what caused that wreckage to occur.
Yeah, you talk about just being self-inflicted in terms of those mistakes. Imagine the potential. Just imagine if he pulled off that last maneuver.
I know.
You would skip half the track. You would save like 30 seconds. That is completely unbelievable. So if Big 71 manages to pull off something like that in this next track, that's going to be absolutely incredible and insane to see. But I mean, look, it's just only himself who's limiting his potential. So look, keep in mind that this guy is going to go right back into the kitchen and start whipping up something crazy again next time we see him around, because I am sure that we will, because the Big 71, no matter how he places this time around, is going to be back at it again soon.
Oh, he'll be cooking, surely. Like, you know, you won't be having a Christmas break at all in the slightest. He'll be there, back on the grind, trial and error once again, and then continuing to up his consistency in comparison. But for Elite Joe now, he's going to feel like, okay, I've still got the opportunity now to claw his way back and take victory here and get that podium finish. But for Big 71, imagine what that will do for his confidence to be able to place at least third in this tournament. But Big 71 now will be kicking off from his perspective and to see exactly if he can try and secure victory in this third place playoff. Big see the short growth coming up from Elite Joe is actually warded off but managed to stay on board. But Elite Joe was the one who caused himself that wreck. And now he's going to be falling very far behind. And surely for Big 71, this is for him to win.
Oh man, you talk about self-inflicted. This was the complete opposite. I thought Onio was going to take that victory very early on just by shoving Big 71 out of the way. But by doing so, Onio actually smacked into the wall. So the Big 71 now almost has half a lead in terms of half a lap of victory. So this is incredible. Big 71 now, as long as he doesn't make any risky maneuvers or crash anything like that, he's going to take this handedly.
Certainly will do indeed. 71 now, you can see just getting around this next corner. Got Shockwave's going to be coming over this next jump. Not going to play any kind of unsafe cars in, nothing too risky. He's using that brake nitro to get across this field. And this is looking very good for Big 71. Elite Joe again doing the usual stuff and trying to do everything he can to close the gap. But we know how difficult the task is going to be. But he has witnessed the likes of Big 71 fall at the final hurdle before. Just praying now that he does it again. But let's be honest, it's not going to happen. We'll be seeing Elite Joe placing fourth, and Big 71, congratulations to him, managed to scrape by with that podium finish, getting that third place position.
Great job by Big 71. I don't know if you caught that, but when he got shoved out of the way by Elite Joe, he actually managed to recover it and use that barrel to go onto that top portion. So that was quick thinking on his feet by Big 71, and commiserations to Elite Joe. That was a great series being played, but just maybe a little too ambitious in that third map. But otherwise, both these players just played absolutely incredible. And I go on and on about, like, oh, maybe these little mistakes here and there, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, but I'm not the one up there. These players are the ones up there. I'm sitting here yapping all day long.
That is exactly it. But for Big 71, it's like I said before, even though he didn't make it to the grand final, a third place in this environment, he's going to be extremely happy with himself. Not really what he expected in managing to get to the grand final, but it also boost his confidence massively in order to be able to pursue future events in 2025.
Exactly. No slouch. Absolutely whatsoever. I mean, over 2 million players, and these are the top 8 out of 2 million plus players. That is incredible. So, and then you go on to get third place. Oh my gosh, that's like, I don't even know. I would never be able to do that.
No, I wouldn't either, which is exactly what we're seeing here, so it makes a lot more perfect sense. But we do have some highlights and replays from that last series if you just missed it, and it was definitely crazy in itself. Kicking off Elite Joe of how he was performing.
Yeah, there we go. As you can see, Nevada, and there you can see the Big 71 trying to get onto that rail, trying to get that extra top speed. Unfortunately, just not working out. Every once in a while, you will see the ability for these players to jump back and forth between those rails, and that'll work out. But the Big 71 trying to follow it up yet again with another ambitious trick, but unfortunately, it just didn't quite work out. I'm not sure exactly. I've never seen that shortcut before in my entire life. I was like, okay, this is either going to be the biggest thing in asphalt history, or it's going to be just another wreck, and unfortunately, it was the latter. But great job by Elite Joe again. But unfortunately for him here, he got shoved out of the way from the Big 71, and that's what gave it away for this third track.
It certainly did. And for Big 71, what were you most impressed with in terms of his ability, apart from his refinements?
Honestly, I was just so impressed by the way he improved into that third place decider.
Yeah, it really was. It was just honestly a spectacle in itself, and we still got the grand finals to come. But how do you feel like with these two players as well, with Nato and Requiem? Is this something you may have partially expected, or maybe had a little bit of a feeling in your mind, or did you expect a completely different outcome?
Completely different by all means necessary.
I hope so. I was just saying, you're lying to me. Stop lying.
Yeah,
but,
that was crazy.
It was crazy in itself. But we'll be having the grand finals later on. But first, we have a little video from HP for you guys to check out. So have a look and see what you think.
We're the fastest on track by far, by far. Only we've won Le Mans.
And we're back with another interview, but before we get into the grand finals, we do have a very special guest at Ferrari's very own Miguel Molina. Hello there, lovely to see you. And one of the first questions I want to start with you is, with the Le Mans, how did it feel winning that championship many months ago?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been quite impressive. It's an achievement that I've been working for a long time. And actually this year we could make it happen, and it was a lot of emotions because it's a race that we've been working and trying to win for a couple of years, and this year we could manage it, and I'm really happy.
I can tell especially. And of course with the Le Mans, it takes a huge amount of endurance. Talk to me a little bit about the stamina and the training you have to go through in order to endure such a long event.
Well, first of all, I think experience is a big thing on this race, but for sure, physically it's very important to be in a good shape, but also we have a lot of hours in the simulator that we have in Maranello, so it's very important. It's quite similar to this kind of games, but for sure it's a big preparation behind. There is a lot of effort behind, also not from us, from the drivers, but also from all the group and all the engineers behind. So I think it's very tough, but when everything is going in a good way, it's very important.
And what do you think about the Ferrari F499P anyway? Because with the vehicle in itself, it's incredible. We've had something similar with the Modificana, inspired by the exact vehicle which you won in at that time on Le Mans. And what's your personal thoughts on the vehicle in itself?
Well, for sure, it's a car that is with a lot of technology behind. We have a combustion engine and a hybrid engine, an electric engine in the front. So it's quite a unique car. A lot of aerodynamics behind as well. So it's, like I said, very complex car, but it's like everything. As much as you are driving and as much as you are playing with is better, and you get it into your hands. That is the most important thing.
And what do you think about Asphalt Legends Unite itself? A little bit different compared to Le Mans, especially with the amount of time it takes to finish the tracks in comparison to the Le Mans itself. But what's your opinion on the game?
I think it's a very good platform, a very good game. I saw the car flipping a lot and in the game, but yeah, I think it's very nice because as we could see, there are so many players that they play with a different, with the iPad, with the joystick, and that's quite unique, I think, and it's very interesting, and it's my first experience looking in this kind of e-games, so really happy to be here and contribute in this matter as well.
And final question for you is, are we going to see you trying to qualify next year on asphalt?
I think I will need to put a lot of hours on this because I see the level here and I don't have this time.
I don't blame you at all in the slightest. We'll let you stick with the Le Mans anyway. But thank you so much for the interview, and thank you very much for being here as well. We're going to throw it over to Marth before we get into the grand finals.
And oh boy, what a grand finals it is. 2 complete newcomers here to the live tournament environment for the Ferrari HP Esports Asphalt Series Finals 2024. It is going to be a matchup and one for the history books as we close out the entire year and closing out eras, not only with Future Flash in terms of just the absolute king of asphalt being dethroned in the first matchup here for the tournament. So Nato and Requiem, oh my gosh, it is going to be one of the craziest stories of the year so far.
Going to be absolutely incredible grand final. 2 players which we would not have anticipated going into this matchup, and it's going to be a complete Japan standoff here. No EU, no NA. These 2 players from Japan who looked here to come to make a statement and an impact and a dent against all these top players. Nato and Requiem have already done so, and now it's the battle of these 2 juggernauts to find out exactly who's going to come out top and come up trumps here to be crowned champion here at the Ferrari HP Esports Asphalt Series Finals.
Yeah, and a conversation we had earlier with Nato, especially about maybe thinking a little bit about the nerves coming into that first match, but now there's sort of 2 sides of the story. Either you're extremely nervous about being into the grand finals, especially in the first time, or you're not nervous at all. You're like, I didn't expect it to be here. I have nothing to lose anymore.
Yeah, exactly that. Let's take a look at the bracket, though, for the viewers at home who've only just joined us. If you have just joined us, where have you been this entire time? But that's not a problem. We're back with the grand finals anyway, so you haven't missed out on the very last portion here, the final hurdle here for all these players. And I think a lot of people looking back at these quarterfinals matchups and thinking, what on earth happened?
Yeah, I mean, where did everything go wrong for these heavy favorites? We talked about a bunch of dark horses having the potential to make it all the way, and we have seen it before in previous Asphalt series. But this time around, it wasn't just, oh, the dark horse makes an upset every once in a while here and there. But this time, both of the newcomers completely first time around in the first tournament environment all the way to the grand finals. Both of them. There's not going to be any upset potential in this final matchup or anything like that. It's just going to be completely 1 versus 1 for the first time.
And we do have the tracks for you at home to see exactly how these 2 drivers are going to be participating. And look at me kicking things off with Singapore. It will be Wave Rider. Then afterwards it will be the Himalayas for a frozen route. Auckland Straits and Harpins, which is going to be quite an interesting one. Cairo for 1,000 Minarets. Roma to the stream, and you can see, of course, with these other 2 tracks, it's going to be an absolute bloodbath between the 2. I think this could potentially go all the way, considering the circumstances and what we've seen, how they've performed leading into the grand finals.
Absolutely, and I got a big old smile on my face because as soon as it was shown that we got Singapore as the first track, I heard a bunch of gasps from the other players over there like, what? Singapore? What in the world? This is actually one of the newer tracks at Asphalt Legends Unite, and in my opinion, one of the most beautiful. The colors are excellent, and just like the roller coasters in that track, we had the opportunity to try them out in Ferrari Land, and it literally blew my socks off. But boy, do I have to tell you that. But these players are going to have to blow their own socks off with the top speed of the 499P Modificata, especially in Singapore. That's going to be an interesting decision on how those players manage to take the different routes in Singapore. Again, one of the later tracks to be added to the game. We talk about US Midwest and, you know, I guess other tracks like San Francisco, about these tracks that they know like the back of their hand. It's been out since the game's release, but with Singapore being one of the newer additions, maybe players haven't had the opportunity to know every nitty-gritty detail about it, but this time around, that means it's going to be pure skill. Who is literally the fastest driver on the road? That's going to matter the most.
Literally will be. You know, the Ferrari 499P, well, let's be honest, it's like, what, just over 358 kilometers an hour, which is absolutely ridiculous, which is why sometimes some players ride in the struggle bus just a tad in terms of the handling of the vehicle. And the players have had the vehicle for about a week to try and practice on and try and get ready for this event itself. But no more time is wasted, as now the practice is over and we've got the 2 Japan juggernauts to find out who's going to come up trumps and come out top here in this grand finals. And we're underway in the first track between Requiem and Nato, and we can kick things off from Nato's perspective, already trying to get round his opponent, but this Requiem is able to maintain that lead and It's going to be neck and neck between the two in this first portion of the track as Nato manages to take over.
Oh my gosh, what a clean overtake by Nato. Saw the opportunity and slipped right by just in the nick of time. And Nato, as a result, taking a commanding lead here as we get to around a third of the track's length. But that was a great job. Unfortunately for Requiem, though, that was just nothing you could really take advantage of. You couldn't really see that happening in the rear view mirror. It took a split second for Nato to take that overtake. And as we head onto the second lap, I'm going to be interested to see if Requiem has anything up his sleeve. But there we go, Nato taking advantage of jumping off of that little cliff there, trying to get that airtime, doing a great job of getting up to that 30% extra top speed. Requiem, I think twice in a row has now gotten this double barrel roll, which has given him so much more nitro, but it didn't really matter because Nato just took the lead out into this corner here. As you can see, both players trying to get that early section there, trying to split the section in two, but it looked like Requiem's doing a good job of trying to get to that section in the middle there, trying to slice that corner ever so slightly, but Nato having that different lead there, that different angle, actually made him get that double barrel roll.
Certainly did indeed, and still able to continue on the warpath for Nato, looking to be able to get that first track victory here. Just a matter of time, he crosses the finish line and he'll be able to start off the series with a bang. And you saw there was only about a second difference between the two. That's how close it's going to be, and now it has been for a lot of these players. But going into the grand finals now, we can see Requiem, he had a good early start to begin with, a couple of very, very minor mistakes which caused him that loss in terms of having the lead, and that consistency not shown as much compared to what we witnessed in that second semi-final earlier.
I mean, one of the greatest quotes in racing history was, if you no longer go for a gap, you are no longer a racing driver. And Nato showed that in spades. There maybe was a little chance in his brain that he thought, okay, if I go for this gap, maybe I get knocked down, maybe I get pushed to the side. But no. He had to go pedal to the metal and take advantage of that little section that Requiem afforded to him. And boy, oh boy, did he do a great job to showcase that he went for that gap and he managed to take the victory in the end.
Yeah, they just take the smallest margins and don't really care about the risk factor, which is how things should be done. And if you're playing from behind like that and you're that close, you need to take advantage of it. Because if you don't, when else are you going to get those opportunities? So those kind of opportunities come like a very small amount of time on a very small amount of occasions. And the fact that he took it and managed to fly away like that was pretty damn good stuff, considering the experience on this track alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing to mention is the fact that Requiem, a couple series ago, actually, when he lost that first track, you know what he did? He just knocked down Future Flash like he was nothing.
Yeah, he seems to have a habit of that.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe he's thinking into his mind like, okay, I got to do it again. I got to do it to him, you know. That's just the way that it is. You got to knock down your opponent.
I'll treat myself. Might as well do it a second time. Why not?
I'm in the grand finals. You got to take advantage of that. You know, you got to do everything you can. And while some players might see a knockdown as dirty or whatever, it's the game mechanic that lets you win. I mean, if they have the opportunity, you think these players might take advantage of it. Now, of course, there is the gentleman's agreement not to play very dirty or anything like that we see these players try to take a hold of. And it is great to see because you get that neck-and-neck racing. But with the knockdown mechanic enabled, though, and Requiem, we just saw that he was taking advantage of it earlier. Maybe he will do so in the second track.
Yeah, we'll have to see how things are going to go in the second track, which will be coming up very shortly. So thank you for your patience. And if you're just joining us, we are here for the grand finals at the Asphalt Series 2024. As the entire match, or the entire event so far has been a best of 3, but the grand finals will be a best of 7. But I just heard in my ear that it will be replayed in terms of the first track. So even though Nato won the first track, it's actually going to be a reset, and we could be starting from scratch again. So we get to see a little bit more Singapore.
More asphalt? Boy, oh boy, do I want more asphalt. Are you kidding me? I only want more asphalt. I wish these things could go. I mean, we have a 24 hours of Le Mans. Why can't we have a 24 hours of asphalt?
We could. I think we'll be pretty damn tired casting it, though, considering the amount of shenanigans that happens in asphalt in comparison to Le Mans, which will be unspeakable. We're going to have to get like 10 of us to probably do it at some point.
The track would just be littered with cars after knockdown after knockdown. Oh my gosh, that would be crazy to cast though, but I would be down for it.
Maybe like a knockdown counter or something in the top right. Probably get to about 170 something by the time we finish the 24 hours.
Yeah, oh boy. 24 hours of asphalt, that would be something. But look, taking a look at that, even though it won't count, we'll take a look at the gameplay itself, though, because I think it is important, obviously, coming into the grand finals. Both these players, first time about, and we did see that Requiem, I don't know if he got enough barrel rolls that time around, but it didn't matter in the end because Nato managed to slip through that gap, and that was really the most important part. It doesn't really matter how much nitro you get as long as you're not taking the right racing lines.
Yeah, that's right indeed. And yeah, just let you guys know again that the first track will be replayed, so we'll be starting off as grand finals best of 7 from from scratch. But we do have the tracks for you just to remind you at home exactly what we'll be playing on. As you can see, we'll be starting off on Wave Rider in Singapore once again. And you are right, though. You know, Singapore is like a track we very rarely see, often for the obvious reasons. But we're going to go into the first track again very shortly. I think we're just going to do it right then, but it looks like the admins have told me that we're going to take a little bit more time before we head into our first one. So.
Yeah, oh my gosh, Singapore, we're gonna get all of the action here into the Ferris wheel, into the grand finals here for the Ferrari HB Esports Asphalt Series Finals 2024, and Requiem, not managed to get all of the nitro he wanted to, but actually taking a bit of a different route, managed to go to the right side, whereas Nato goes to the left. Will that make a big difference? It will. Nato still doing that overtake like we saw last time. Neck on neck, turned into Nato in first place. What an incredible overtake by Nato, choosing to get that different route, and that's going to make all the difference here in the first lap. Now, however, that being said, Requiem isn't too far behind. He still has many opportunities to take the victory here, depending on how he takes this second track.
See how he does indeed, but Nato is still able to maintain that lead. How on forward is going to be another question because of the fact that Requiem is head and hot on his tails and he's still able to maintain that lead, but still got a little bit of time left on the clock. Requiem still trying to close that gap, but will he be able to keep on the shot? Yes, he does. He stops himself from wrecking, but the only problem is the fact that he lost out on so much nitro during that course.
Ooh, that was a bit of an interesting 360 by Nato. I think that lost him the lead, even though we saw Requiem try to save that barrel roll there. By the way, doing a great job of doing so, not wrecking absolutely whatsoever, but Nato actually tried to do a 360, maybe trying to do a little bit of a floaty drift, but maybe that misinput caused him to go the opposite way. But it looks like Requiem just barely by the skin of his teeth is going to come out in first place here on Singapore.
Same situation, different win this time round. You can see they're talking about it already, thinking like, well, you know, I did win that first one, and now I'm just giving it to you pretty much. It's basically parcel. But yeah, you've got to think about the mindset of the players as well. Like when you feel like you won that first track, and then you go into a reset, and then you lose it, it can take its toll on your mental. It really can indeed. I've seen a lot of players go there before, and normally it ends in the opposite end of the spectrum. So it's so important to be able to learn to have a not just a default mindset, but reset your mental fortitude going into this matchup, because that's when it could end very, very quickly, even in a best of 7.
Yeah, the mental capacity of these players is absolutely amazing. I mean, you can see they're both sort of laughing about the outcome of that. But something we talk about, you know, in esports in general is just that mental fortitude. If you're a player who's trying to make it into the grand finals, maybe your mental is maybe cracking a little bit as you try and get to that position. If the other player has no stress, no worries whatsoever, you're going to have that disadvantage. But with both these players obviously being their first time, as we head onto the Himalayas for our second track, the nerves are going to start to build. Will this grand final turn out the way that they want to? We're about to find out again here on Himalayas.
Indeed, but Requiem had such a nice lead, but it's already given it away after that failed straight jump with that barrel roll, and he's going to have to do everything he can. And now it's literally beyond impossible, but my goodness, Nato also crashed. So if Requiem didn't make that second wreckage, we could be seeing a much closer affair here in comparison. But Requiem now is going to have to do a huge amount in order to claw his way back.
Oh, both these players managed to wreck, but Nato actually going down into the dumps in terms of that route there, actually trying to get as much as possible to catch up, making sure that Requiem doesn't go in the rear view here and say bye-bye. But it looks like Requiem, even though he's trying to catch up, Nato still has this huge lead as we go barreling onto one of the biggest straights here in Asphalt with Himalayas. You can bounce off the side here of the cave, get an insane amount of top speed and air time there, as you can see Requiem doing a great job of taking advantage of it. But just look at that mini-map. Nato is so far ahead.
You barely see him on a mini-map, he's gone that far ahead so far. But saying that though, he's clawed his way back just a little bit, about 3 seconds behind, but any problems with a player in terms of the stature of Nato, it's going to be a very difficult task in hand in order to try and claw their way back. Requiem is just hoping at this stage in the game, he's so far behind, but maybe apply some pressure in order to be able to force Nato to wreck himself along the way. But Nato's been playing it not too bad so far. He's actually still playing it relatively safe, but saying that though, was able to stay on course.
Ooh, there we go. Requiem trying to do another shortcut, actually bouncing off the ice there to try and get some more airtime, but Nato playing it very safe, taking that extra route there on the left-hand side. That's the route you want to go if you're just trying to play safe. You will get some airtime either way, but yeah, Nato just playing it safe. He knows he has this huge lead, so there's nothing risky he wants to do to try and compromise that lead. So great job by Nato, changing your mentality, changing the way you play the game to make sure you secure the victory here. And looks like for this track, we're going to be tying it up at 1-1.
I love how Nato's not actually playing safe at all in the slightest. Again, just treating it like another qualifier, like another time trial. And sometimes that's how you should do it, depending on the circumstances. He wants to make Requiem feel like it's almost impossible to even bother attempting to breach that gap and overtake. But it will be Nato who will be able to come up trumps here in this second track. He will be tying things up one apiece. And then Requiem is now going to have to wonder what he needs to do going into track number 3.
Yeah, there we have it. The series is all tied up, and that's what you want to see in a best-of-7 grand finals. You want to see a clean sweep. That's a little boring every once in a while, but this time you can see players conversing there, maybe talking about how things may have went wrong in that early section. It was really hard to call in that first section of Himalayas because both players wrecked, but I think it was Requiem who wrecked actually twice, and I think that sort of sealed the deal for Nato getting that huge lead there on the first lap.
What I love about these two players as well, that they're so casual about it after each game. They're having a laugh and a giggle and a chinwag about everything that occurred in that last track, and then just cracking on super serious mode. It's actually quite interesting, quite funny to watch as well. But that's what you love to see, isn't it, as well, of course. You know, they're both very competitive players in this grand final, looking to try and secure that victory, but also having a bit of a laugh and a bit of a chinwag as well after each track. But now we're heading over now to see exactly how things are going to occur. If Requiem now could take track number 3 and lose to 2-1, or if Nato got something else to say about it, a win back-to-back tracks now, with Nato with that slight edge here. And I did say with this particular track, there's a lot of narrow choke points here, and things could get very spicy leading up to the final part of the lap.
Yeah, here we go on Auckland. So many hairpins and so many 90-degree corners, but luckily for them, the 499P Modificata has insane handling. You can dip, dodge, and dive around these corners in an instant, and it looks like that's what Requiem and Nato are both doing. But it seems like Requiem, every once in a while, just may have touched the edge there on terms of that wall. That may have slowed him down just a little bit, but Nato taking advantage and actually going into a different route here. As you see, managed to go to that top route, and Requiem following suit. Usually you would see the players go into the other route, but Requiem knocking against that wall, that's going to lose him about a quarter of a second here in terms of the lead. Nato taking advantage with the shockwave in the air, getting as much airtime as he possibly can, and it looks like he's going to come down to this hairpin corner in terms of who leads this first lap. Nato going for the outside, and it looks like Requiem trying to go a little bit on the inside there, but both of them trying to go for that shockwave barrel roll up into the first lap, crossing the line there.
Brilliant stuff coming out from Nato here, but Requiem isn't too far behind so far, just a few tenths per second, hot on his heels and on his tail here to try and at least close this gap. And will he be able to, though? It looks like he's done a huge amount of work here with all that nitro and the straight line and the refinements he's made. It's very, very solid, but he's probably caught up by about 1/10 of a second here. Still not enough to be able to even have the opportunity in order to overtake.
Yeah, there we go. Nato just maintaining that lead as much as he can. And with this track, you talk about precise driving. There aren't any huge jumps or corners that you look at and you have very, very drastically different approaches. So for this one, it's a very technical track. It's all about how these players take those minute details. And for Nato, he's taking these corners a bit ever so carefully more in terms of cutting that edge, but without cutting the corner too much to hit the wall. And as you can see, there are exactly perfect lines there. And Requiem learning from the mistake in terms of last time not bumping into the wall. But Nato's not making that mistake. He didn't make it on the first lap, so he still has this lead. And it seems like throughout this last hairpin corner, Nato is going to lead 2-1 in our best-of-7 grand finals.
And approaching the final part of the finish line here. A few more barrel rolls coming out from Requiem, but it's just not going to be enough. Nato was able to secure another victory here, back-to-back. And it only needs 2 more required in order to be the Asphalt Series 2024 champion. And he knows it could just be a matter of time as long as he keeps up the pace he's dictating on these tracks and the how he's going to perform in track number 4. It's going to be a big indicator just due to the fact that you want to try and pummel him hard and fast before he gets a bit too carried away and try and tie things up. That's not something you want to do. If he wins this and manages to take it 3-1, then he's going to demoralize his opponent so much that he's got to win 3 tracks back-to-back. Very, very rare feat in itself. The last time I think I witnessed it happen was Jagermeister defeating Future Flash. That was the last time I witnessed it. Don't get me wrong, it was only last month, but before that, how often did we see it? Barely ever.
Yeah, no, we may have seen every once in a while reverse sweep for a best of 5, but for best of 7, that's just going to be off the charts as we go here onto 1,000 minarets in Cairo. Requiem, ever so slightly going underneath to the barrel roll, not quite getting it completely, and as a result, Rex onto the backside like a turtle flipping over on its side, and Nato has another huge lead like we've seen in the last track. This is going to guarantee him that 3-1 lead unless he makes a huge mistake or Requiem does something crazy, but wow, what a great job by Nato to secure it. And yeah, it's like both these players have just great experience here, even though it's their first time. And ooh, Nato trying to go for that jump, even though he didn't have to. He managed to pull it out perfectly. Oh my gosh, he gets as much airtime as required. And unfortunately, Requiem tried to do the same. It didn't quite work out for him. So Nato, not only did he have that lead going into the first lap, he has now extended it by double.
Nato looking very strong indeed, already looking to have a huge lead in terms of going into this full track and could be edging his way into a 3-1 victory, which is going to cause a little bit of problems here for Requiem now, as he's going to continue to do everything humanly possible in order to close this gap. You can see now, even with the double nitro going around this next corner into the perfect nitro, but let's be honest here, in a track like this, there's always possibilities for the player in the lead in order to cause a bit of a mistake. But Nato, even though he's playing super unsafe, he's playing extremely well. He doesn't really care about having a plan B or going into safe mode.
Yeah, I mean, I thought in Himalayas, he took some of the safe routes, but he was executing them like he was going to take a little bit of risk every once in a while. But here, he has no care in the world. And I think Requiem just wrecked there once again. This is the third wreck in a row for this track. And it's just so unfortunate because we know the potential for Requiem. But I think it is that environment position. But Nato almost flipping onto the backside, but luckily saving it very last minute there. So this lead is still very much in the hands of Nato. So great job to recover that, making sure you don't wreck and give up the lead. Playing a little bit risky there, but making sure to recover it just in time. So as we go on to the 360 corner, Nato has a huge commanding lead, and he's definitely going to make it 3-1 here in our grand finals. Would we see a best of 7 reverse sweep? I don't know, but that would be something for the history books. Well, I guess it wouldn't be because he already has one up on him. But either way,
we could treat it
we can treat it like it. There we go. With the Singapore restart, with all that's going on, with all the shenanigans, we can treat it like we do. And there we go. Nato crossing the finish line, securing the 3-1 lead here in the grand finals.
Nato looking absolutely unstoppable at the moment. 3 tracks in a row, and this is what Requiem needs to replicate if he can. And if he doesn't, then it's going to be second place for him and the crowned champion for Nato. So just one more track required in order to secure this victory. In all fairness, both of them are technically victorious anyway, putting Japan on the map here. Both of them make it into the grand finals, but whoever's going to take that top spot is going to make it a little bit sweeter here, as we're going to see now if Nato can now close out this grand finals in a win, or if it will give Requiem room to breathe here heading into this track number 5.
Yeah, no matter what happens, both of these players have cemented their names in the history books for Asphalt Esports. There's no doubt in my mind that these players are here to stay. It was their first time here out and about in terms of the live LAN environment, but they have the experience now. They have the qualifications to back it up as well. So great job by both these players.
Yeah, brilliant job indeed, as they're now going to get ready very shortly for track number 5. And my goodness, it's been, some of it's been quite clean, some of it's been the complete opposite end of the spectrum, hasn't it, in terms of how they've been performing. And yeah, some of the tight gaps and corners and some of the things they were able to close out in that first track was just a show of not just skill, but shows that they just try and take every kind of advantage possible. How unsafe they play in the lead, which is something we have seen in the past in different regions, but now we're going to go into the next track now, and already in terms of the risk factor then, Nato's now been taken down and given Requiem plenty of room now and plenty of space here with a huge lead.
Oh man, I was going to go into this next track here with my big caster voice and go on about how only one track separates Nato from victory, but I don't need that now. I mean, Requiem has a huge lead. This is certainly going to be a 2-3 victory here for Requiem, making sure to grab this grand finals and make sure he doesn't give up so easily. So great job by Requiem, but for Nato, it's just an unfortunate mistake. Now, he does have those extra track buffers to play with. It's not like it's out of the question yet to just, you know, win this in the end. But for Requiem, now the conversation starts because it's no longer a 1-3 lead. This is giving him the potential to crawl back into the grand finals and make it a competitive series.
That's done indeed for Nato. Right at this point, he needs to hope that Requiem falls short in some way, makes a grave, major mistake. But Willy Bo, that's going to be an entirely different story, but that's not going to happen. No, Nato's already wrecked once again, which is going to secure Requiem's victory here in track number 5. So now he's going to go down this next corner with the perfect nitro. And in fairness, not really too much to talk about now because we know that he's managed to seal it. And this is where some people's demise begins, because they've had that 3-track back-to-back victory. They'll lose one, they'll be like, oh, okay, it's fine. But when they then tie things up in the series, that's when they start sweating.
Yeah, and you talk about the esports choke mentality as
That's
well.
the
I mean,
one.
That's huge. That could absolutely be a factor. Nato just barely making sure he completes that barrel. I was a little worried for a second there as I was talking about choking, but yeah, there we go. Oh my gosh, great job by both these players in terms of this whole race in general. But for Requiem, I mean, you're thinking about this next series in terms of this is actually doable. I have the chance to come back all of the way. But Nato going through the beautiful Coliseum in Rome, making sure to at least finish out the race, being a good sport. But yeah, this next track is going to decide whether or not Requiem has a chance to start to make this comeback a conversation, or if Nato is going to brush off this last track as just a one-off loss and make sure that he can close it early on.
I hope he brushes it off, because I can tell you what, if Requiem somehow ties the series, he won't be brushing anything off. He'll be sweating like anything else. And he'll be like, I should have just ended it 4-1 like I should have done back in track number 5. But that mishap there, we've seen it. But he seems to be laughing it off. He seems to be quite content and doesn't really feel that much pressure at all. He's just getting on with it. It's like the way they're both reacting and how we're seeing them at the moment, it's like doing a casual scrim rather than a grand final.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're bringing the mentality that they have during the time-limited events. That's where these players are known for. If you're not familiar with these players, it's because they haven't been in terms of the live finals yet. However, they are so infamous for dominating the leaderboards globally, absolutely phenomenal performances in laps. But again, that's in a totally different environment. That's you versus the track versus the clock, and that's all you have to worry about. This time around, though, there's another player on the track. You're looking around your shoulder, and there's actually a Ferrari in your rearview mirror. That's scary as heck. So yeah, for these players, that's a totally different environment. But I mean, I was expecting, like I mentioned earlier with that first series, you know, maybe some of these players have the nerves, and I think Nato talked about it a little bit earlier. But here as we go into Osaka, the nerves are nothing to be afraid of. They have to embrace the environment. They have to embrace the grand finals. And here we go, Requiem taking an early lead, doing a great job of trying to block that 360 by Nato, cutting the inside line, and making sure he secures the shockwave overtake.
I loved it from Requiem as well. Instead of prioritizing the 360 to get the nitro, he decided to just go straight and body block instead with the shockwave that follows suit straight afterwards. It was a huge play and great fundamentals coming out from Requiem. But you see Nato directly behind him. Good overtake here on the outside. Manages just two, but in the end you see Requiem pushing out of the way once again, but actually caused Requiem to wreck. And for Nato, could this be the victory track now to secure the Asphalt Series 2024 Finals Championship?
Oh man, that was tire on tire contact there. I wasn't sure who was actually going to maintain the top there, but it looks like Nato just barely squeaks out. Now, this isn't a huge lead just yet. It seems like Nato lost a little bit of speed because of that contact. So going on to the second lap, these jumps are going to be so important. We saw last time they tried to do some 360s to get nitro, but for Nato's sake, it has everything to do with playing safe and not making sure he wrecks. So both these players are going to cut the inside line, making sure to use shockwave to get up to top speed and then into the air there. But it looks like last time there was actually some issues with that jump, that barrel roll here. It looks like Requiem's not going to have that issue this time around, but for Nato, he's doing a great job cutting that chicane 1 versus 1 there and doing a great job to maintain the top speed.
Certainly is indeed. There's only 25% of the track left in order to try and put a stop or a halt to Nato here, but it looks like Requiem still looking to be quite far behind, at least a second after 2 seconds. Literally almost close to impossible. He's just praying that Nato somehow caused a massive error along the way. And will he be able to, though? That's going to be the next key thing here. Nato's still continuing on gets the time trial, playing extremely well here, being really consistent as we're heading over to the finish line. And that is it. Nato will be your Ferrari HP Esports Asphalt Series 2024 champion.
What an insane performance by both players, but Nato taking it in the end. First Grand Finals appearance, first victory as well. That is nothing to scoff at. What an incredible job. But you can see smiles on both players, maybe a little bit surprised that both of them made it, but honestly, this was just one of the most incredible series to witness, and big congratulations to Nato for winning this tournament.
Yeah, it was just an incredible feat in itself, as we're now going to get ready for the awards ceremony. absolute banger of a grand finals here at the Ferrari HP Esports Asphalt Series 2024 finals. But now is for the awards for the top 3 placing players. And we're going to start off with the 3rd place player who managed to come out trumps in that 3rd place playoff. It is none other than Big 71. And in 2nd place, he's had a phenomenal performance for the entirety of this event, but sadly just short in terms of the grand finals, but it's been consistent and incredible all event long. It is none other than Requiem. And the winning player, and we'll get Miguel onto the stage to award the trophy for him shortly. It will be the fact that Nato been performing all well event long, has had an incredible performance and has played nothing short of spectacular. It is none other than Nato! Say not just thanks to the players and thanks to everyone else who was able to come by, but these players have put on an incredible showing. So please give us another round of applause for your podium finishers. Now, sadly for us, that's all we've got time for here today for the Asphalt Series 2024 finals. I would like to say a huge thank you to everyone at Ferrari, everyone at Gameloft, the entire staff, to production, Marth, where is he? There he is, I managed to find him here, and the fact that the players, and not only that, the community, and you, the viewers at home. With you guys at home, these events would not be made possible. But until then, we'll see you guys next year.